Good evening, and welcome to this meeting of the Boston School Committee. I'm Chairperson Jerry Robinson. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Because this is a remote meeting, I will ask Ms. Parvex to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Alkins, Ms. Knorr, Mr. Peralta,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia, Ms. Torres,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, Ms. Garrett,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight's session is being shared live on Zoom. It will be posted on the school committee's webpage and on YouTube. Tonight's meeting documents are posted on the committee's webpage, bostonpublicschools.org/school committees, under the January 21st meeting link. The meeting documents have been translated into all of the major BPS languages. Any translations that are not ready prior to the start of the meeting will be posted as soon as they are finalized. The committee is pleased to offer live simultaneous interpretation in Spanish, Haitian, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean, Cantonese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, and American Sign Language. The Zoom interpretation feature has been activated. Zoom participants should click the globe icon at the bottom of your screen to select your language preference. I want to remind everyone to please speak at a slower pace to assist our interpreters. I want to remind members that you received an artificial intelligence memo last week. This memo is available in your correspondence and has also been posted on the website under today's meeting materials. We'll begin with the approval of minutes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the December 17th, 2025 and January 5th, 2026 school committee meetings as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Parvex, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Alkins, Mr. Peralta,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Ms. Torres,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, Ms. Garrett,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
The minutes are approved.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the superintendent's report. I present to you our superintendent, Mary Skipper.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome back to everyone. Congratulations to Member Torres and Member Peralta. Welcome to the committee. So my report is a little lengthy, and I will go slow for the interpreters. So first of all, good evening, welcome back, and I'd like to introduce tonight Dr. Simone Wright, who has joined BPS as our new Deputy Superintendent of Academics. Dr. Wright is a leader with unwavering commitment to ensuring education is an effective tool to drive academic achievement. We are so fortunate that she decided to bring that passion to Boston. Most recently, Dr. Wright served as the Chief Academic Officer of the Denver Public Schools in Denver, Colorado, where DPS students achieved notable increases in math and literacy achievement. This included the highest math achievement performance on the state assessment in the district's history. Dr. Wright also served as the Executive Director of Universal School Supports and an Associate Chief of Academics in Denver. Prior to joining the Denver Public Schools, Dr. Wright served as a special advisor in the Chief Academic Officer office at the New York City Department of Education. There, she spearheaded an ambitious curriculum reform and played a crucial role in shaping the system's long-term goals for teaching and learning. Dr. Wright also served as a high school chemistry teacher and held various instructional leadership roles in Houston, Texas. So please welcome Dr. Wright, and I'd like her to be able to turn her camera on and say hello to the committee.
Not there.
Oh, okay, so maybe she has not joined yet.
No, she's showing up, but her camera is off and so is her microphone. So hopefully,
Okay, we'll get her to be able to come back on in a second.
okay.
So a couple of updates. So first of all, at the December 17th meeting, the committee made a very difficult decision to close another course to college, Community Academy of Science and Health, which we call CASH, Lee Academy, and to also merge the Henderson K-12 Inclusion School Lower and the Henderson K-12 Inclusion School Upper into one pre-K to 8 school community. These actions will take place, just as a reminder, at the end of the 2027 school year. I wanted to update the committee and the public that since the vote, we have been actively engaging schools to plan next steps. We have held meetings with all school leaders to develop plans to support their school communities through this transition, and we're in constant conversation to support with immediate requests and questions that come up. There's a cross-functional group, including members across every BPS division, that also has been meeting weekly. They're reviewing student-level data together and have started enacting targeted support plans. A senior project manager has been assigned to each school to coordinate district-wide efforts to manage things like highly supported student and family transitions, supported staff transitions, community engagement, and celebrating the legacy of the schools and the operations that go into the closure. We're surveying families to learn if families would like to transition their students early, since that was something we discovered in the last 2 sets of closures and mergers, so that we can plan accordingly and support their choice. We're planning on-site high school fairs where students can learn about their options and all of the other great schools that are in our BPS high school portfolio. The first fair will be held at the Henderson Upper School next week. And we're also actively centering our students with disabilities, which we'll expand on during the SPEDPAC presentation that will happen later on in this meeting. I also wanted to update the committee again on the budget. And so I'm just building on my report from last month. I just wanted to update first on the FY26 budget. So as you know from that December meeting, the district is currently facing a projected deficit of 53 million for the current fiscal year. While it's typical for our district with a budget the size that it is to manage a deficit at this stage of the budget cycle, the magnitude of this year's shortage, in our opinion, requires immediate and strategic action. As I explained at the December 17th meeting, there are several operational costs, some out of the district's control, that are driving up the overall costs. Some of them are the increased health insurance, which we hear about and read about nationally, statewide, on a regular basis, the increased fill rate for our full-time positions, elevated inflation that we all feel at the grocery checkout with our bills, and that's impacting particularly our out-of-district special education services and tuitions, our yellow bus transportation, and food service for students. As soon as we identified the deficit, we took immediate action and decisive action by implementing a spending pause of central office positions, contracts, and stipends back in November. While our initial steps are moving us in the right direction, it's now necessary to identify and implement additional measures immediately to close the remaining gap. Last week, we shared information with our schools about expanding the pause to school-based vacancies and discretionary funds. We're extending the spending pause to include more categories of spending across the central office and elective spending at schools to protect our classrooms and instructional staff. This includes expenditures like supply purchases for next year, professional development for managerial staff, conference attendance, office supplies, not in classroom supplies, but office supplies, and stipends to increase administrative capacity. By taking fiscal responsibility action now, these steps should address the shortfall and put us in the best position to meet the challenges of FY27, which we know is going to be a difficult budget year. We never take these steps lightly, but it's necessary measure to prioritize our core mission and ensure that we enter the 26-27 school year with a stable budget. We're positioning ourselves to protect the most critical aspects of our work, the instructional programs, the high-quality classroom supports that our students and staff rely on every single day. While the fiscal environment is challenging, every budget decision that's being made right now is being weighed against our commitment to inclusive education, equitable literacy, expanding dual language programs, and maintaining long-term facility stability. The FY27 budget process officially begins with our preliminary FY27 budget presentation to the school committee on Wednesday, February 4th, and that's followed by several hearings and meetings, all which are centered around the FY27 budget. The budget hearing on school budgets is Thursday, February 12th. There's a budget hearing on central budgets that will happen Wednesday, March 4th. There's a hearing to review our updated budget proposals based on the feedback from this body and the community, and that will take place on March 18th. And then we finally will ask for the vote for the revised proposal on Wednesday, March 25th. Our budget is then sent to the Boston City Council for their view and appropriation. So there's lots of opportunities for input from the community, from this body, and it's a constant process that starts February 4th and culminates March 25th. I wanted to talk a bit about some of the bright spots that we've been celebrating in BPS. Yesterday, I attended the 2025 Schools of Recognition event at the Massachusetts State House, where we celebrated in total 55 schools of recognition statewide. These are schools that are identified through the state's accountability system, and they share in common demonstrating high achievement, significant improvement, and/or high growth. The 6 BPS schools, and 6 is the highest that we've ever had in BPS, but the 6 BPS schools that were represented at the event with me, the Grew Elementary, the former Philbrook Elementary, which is now part of the Sarah Roberts Elementary School, the PJ Kennedy, New Mission High School, Boston Latin Academy, and Boston Latin School. I also want to thank BTU President Eric Berg and State Representative Adrian Madaro for also being there to take pictures, to be there to celebrate with our school leaders, and to really honor our schools and our educators. We shared this news back with the committee in October of 2025 as part of our DESE update when we released the 2025 accountability results for schools and districts across the state. And that is, again, based on MCAS. But we're very proud of these 6 schools and lots to celebrate there, lots of great work there, as well as throughout our district at other schools. Last week, BPS held its 43rd annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at the Josiah Quincy School Upper School. This featured dances, music, visual art pieces from students representing 8 of the district schools. Each year, through their talent and creativity, our students inspire and move us as Dr. King's living legacy and the embodiment of his vision. And I'm so proud of our students for sharing the spirit and the meaning of the holiday and representing our district so well. I want to give a shout out to Executive Director for the Arts, Amy Wedge, the BPS Visual and Performing Arts Department for just another great celebration, and our students who captured the meaning and spirit of the holiday so beautifully. Congratulations to Elizabeth Talbot of the O'Brien School of Math and Science, who was recently named the 2025 BPS School Counselor of the Year. Ms. Talbot is credited with helping guide many students with decisions about their life beyond BPS. Just this year, she supported 3 students in receiving the most prestigious scholarships available to high school seniors, the Posse Scholarship and the Questbridge Match Scholarship. Congratulations again to Elizabeth and the entire O'Brien community. In early December, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education announced Tommy Simmons, a middle school English and History Social Studies teacher at the Umana Academy, as a finalist for the 2026 Massachusetts Teacher of the Year. Tommy is a lifelong learner who recognizes his students' strengths and encourages them to learn from each other. He was nominated in January of 2025 and went through a rigorous process conducted by DESE. As a finalist, WellPoint, a health benefits company, generously awarded the school $5,000, which can then be used to support student learning or school programming needs. You can view great videos about both Elizabeth and Tommy that were produced by the BPS communications team at bostonpublicschools.org or on social media channels that we hold, such as Instagram and Facebook. Last week, I joined Mayor Wu, former Red Sox pitcher Lenny DiNardo, and the kindergarten students and staff at the Beethoven Elementary School in West Roxbury for a surprise unveiling of All Kids Bike Kindergarten PE Learn to Ride program. The Beethoven School received a donation of what they call Strider balance bikes, or bikes without pedals, which are designed to help children learn the mechanics of riding a bike and balancing. The bikes can then be converted into pedaling bikes once students are ready to learn a pedal bike. All Kids Bike is a national nonprofit with a mission of teaching every child in America to ride a bike in kindergarten phys ed class. The program supports children in reaching a key developmental milestone while promoting fitness. And they've also, All Kids Bikes has also been very active in Region 1 in our district as well. I just want to personally thank them, everyone that came to the event. Lenny DiNardo really spoke to the kids about the importance of physical well-being, and the importance of exercise, and just having fun and playing. The students, we unveiled it behind the curtain. The kindergartners did not know what they were getting. They knew it was a surprise. And the look on their faces when they saw the bikes was just priceless. And then Mayor Wu and I actually each got to ride a bike. And so it was just a lot of fun. And you can see Houdini, which is the owl that's in the picture. And I think it was a toss-up between the bikes and Houdini in terms of popularity. But the students at the Beethoven really, really enjoyed themselves. With spring training camp less than a month away, Boston Red Sox players, coaches, and of course Tessie visited the Hernandez Dual Language K-8 school earlier this month and participated in group read-alouds, coloring time, gym activities, recess, and lunch. Earlier in the day, they visited the Curley K-8 school in Jamaica Plain. Once again, just thank you to the Red Sox. They're such amazing partners to us. And they just have an ongoing commitment to strengthening connections all over the neighborhoods in Boston and just really making great memories, especially, Tess always shows up to these things with our students. I'm also proud to share that the Special Olympics Massachusetts recently named Brighton High School, Mario Umana Academy, Trotter Elementary, and Warren Prescott K-8 School as national banner schools for their efforts to provide inclusive sports and activities for students with and without disabilities. The 4 schools earned this distinguished status as a result of meeting 10 national standards of excellence in the areas of inclusion, advocacy, and respect, developed by a national panel of leaders from the Special Olympics and the education community. This honor reflects our district's and schools' commitment to creating inclusive environments where every student of all abilities can participate, lead, and thrive. Through programs like Unified Sports, inclusive youth leadership, and whole school engagement, we move closer to building a more inclusive future across all of our schools. It is that time with winter athletics. We are fully underway in the season, and I wanted to share some photos of some of our players of the week and standout student athletes that have been named over the past few weeks. I also want to just remind everybody about a few important upcoming dates in BPS athletics. The annual city championship on Thursday, January 29th, the co-ed swimming city championship is held at Madison Park O'Brien Building 4 at the pool. On Wednesday, February 4th, the indoor track and field city championship will be held at the Reggie Lewis Center. And on Wednesday and Thursday, February 19th and 20th, the girls and boys basketball championships at the Mandela Complex at Madison Park Gym. So good luck to our students. It's been an incredible season. We're so blessed to have so many talented, dedicated athletes and coaches. And just good luck to everybody in the championships. And with that, Chair, I will pass it back to you.
Before we move on, did you want to give Simone a moment to?
Yes, if Simone is joined
still
us,
there?
Simone, are you on?
It was a moment ago.
We'll get her in there.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Superintendent. I'll now open the floor for questions and discussion. I'd like to remind my colleagues about our agreed upon norm that we each have 5 minutes per member per round, not including district response. Ms. Parvex will remind us when 1 minute remains and when our time is up. Please make sure your questions are on topics related to the items in the superintendent's report. Other topics not related to the superintendent's report can be raised during new business later in the meeting. Also, please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you in the order I see you. BPS staff, please keep your responses brief and speak slowly to support our interpreters. Thank you. Does anyone have?
And Chair, Simone did let me know that she keeps freezing.
Okay,
So she's having a tech issue is the problem. So
okay,
once she gets that resolved, I'll ask her to come back on.
all right. I'm checking to see if anyone has any questions or concerns or responses to the superintendent's report. Ms. Garrett?
I see Ms. Polanco Garcia.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't see a hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Superintendent, for the report. I think I want to say thank you, Superintendent, for talk to about the suspend the money because it's important the parents, the family understand exactly what happened and that because sometimes the family is a little confused because the next week it talked to about more the budget, the next budget, right? And then if you receive the letter, is normally the language, the letter is very technical.
It is.
I think it's important that the family exactly what happened because it's como what happened for my son follow the therapy, the program is a stop. So it's thank you so much. Appreciate that part. The only my question is if you say a little bit more about exactly what program is to spend in that situation now.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Member Polanco Garcia. And I can understand where for families it can be confusing. Really anything to do with students, student facing, instruction, the classroom, field trips, those are all continuing to go on. There's no issue. We're protecting those by making the pause in other areas that are not having to do with the student, the classroom, or their therapies or their activities or any of that. So those are all safe. There's no pause to those things. We've been very clear with school leaders so that they know. And there's also a process where if there's something that a school leader raises, we can handle that as well. So there won't be impact to classrooms and schools in that way.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Mr. Peralta?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Superintendent, for explaining all this. My question is related to we are starting a new funding model for schools.
Yeah.
And I would like you, excuse me, to comment a little bit what relation, if there is any, between these two things. Because again, parents are gonna be, they are hearing this like, oh, we are funding the needs of the school, but there is also a budget deficit. So if there is any relationship between these two, or it's just a coincidence that at the time that we are implementing a new funding model, we are also facing a budget deficit. Thank you.
Right. So thank you for that question, Member Peralta. So really the model, the reimagining funding model is much more active in next year's budget in FY27. I think the tensions we see on this year's budget, which we're in, are very much what we can all relate to. Things cost more, services cost more, so transportation, tuitions for out-of-district students go up above inflation. Yellow bus service costs more to do. But really health benefits create and are creating a major tension on the budget. Those are not related to the new funding model, the reimagining funding. They're just elements that happen, and they're happening quicker than what was initially budgeted. So we also were extremely we have a 95% fill of our full-time positions, and that is amazing. But that doesn't usually happen, and so as a result, we usually have some monies that when we run, say, over with transportation or over with food, we can redirect it. We don't have that this year. So it's because of these reasons we want to be able to end the year on budget, so next year's budget does not have these tensions. And the best way to do that is to do the pause first at central and then to do the pause with the schools, but not the classroom, just the central administrative kinds of functions.
Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
being fiscal responsible.
Thank you.
Dr. Alkins?
Thank you for this update. I have two questions. One is related to the conversation on the budget deficit. The other one is separate, more or less asking for an update at some point. My question is I'm thinking of particularly with the budget deficit that it will affect sort of like a hiring freeze. I'm thinking about particularly our schools that are closing and those teachers that particularly this year or moving into next year are looking for new positions. How are we thinking about them, supporting them during what we know is a freeze at that point?
Right.
That's just my first question. And then my second is actually related to, I know it's already January. We're thinking about February vacation and then April vacation, where we do enrichment activities for students. Just thinking about how our families are already thinking about that, and if we have any at some point to get some preliminary data for those types of
Sure.
programs.
Sure. So I'll take that second one.
Sure.
Just none of the activities like academic activities and enrichment would be impacted at all by the pause. So those all will run and continue, and we can give school committee a list of the types of things we'll be running. I'll include those in my next soup report, just so folks have that information. In terms of the hiring, so the pause is for positions that are not currently filled, right? They're vacant. There's nobody in them. But it's only for the remainder of this year. So starting July 1st, the next year's budget, FY27, kicks in, and any positions that are budgeted will be hired. So the teachers that may be, or like say staff that is in buildings that are closing at the end of this year, or the staff that would be for FY27 closures, those staff are just going to fold into a regular hiring process because all of those positions will be active come July 1st. So they'll start hiring, truthfully. We start that process February, March, April for the following year. So really the pause for this year is only on positions that there's no one in. And it's for non-instructional positions. So if it's a para position, it gets hired. If it's a teacher position, it gets hired. It's really for non-instructional positions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I have just one quick question. It was fun to see the new All Kids Bike program start at the Beethoven. Will that happen at other schools or will it just be at the Beethoven?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So it has been going in Region 1 in some of the schools, and I think we are looking at how we might be able to expand it because as you know, the mayor's commitment is for all students to learn to ride their bikes nice and young, and that's our shared goal. So we'll be working with that organization along with some, philanthropy and folks that want to be able to support BPS as a mechanism for figuring out how to expand.
Great.
It's a lot of fun watching the kids. They're
Yeah.
like zipping around. I was very slow on my bike, I will say.
Alrighty. Miss Noor.
First of all, thank you so much for the updates. And I really appreciate how you have to follow up about the school closures and the steps that were taken to make sure that the kids who are being affected by it are like getting proper follow-up on it. My question about the budget is there a specific like reason or specific thing that we did before this year that kind of caused the budget deficit? And if there is, how can we prevent it for FY27 and later?
Yeah. So this is a great question, always from students, right? So what we want to make sure, right, is that we are stable going into next year. I think what we're seeing different this year is kind of unprecedented health benefit costs nationally. So we added a lot of FTEs, like post, in ESSER from basically the pandemic on. And when you attach health benefits, those increase every year, like the amount. On top of that, the premiums nationally are going up, up, and up. So you've seen this probably in the news, you've seen it in the state. All districts are struggling with this. So that amount and that kind of outpacing, additionally, our bus transportation, as you guys know, we've put a lot of resource to the on-time percentage. We've had to add some routes. That becomes a tension point of cost. Food and reimbursement from the government versus what we spend to bring good, healthy, locally grown food. That creates it. So we're just seeing those tension points not resolving in the budget the way that they would in a typical year. And for that reason, we need to be fiscally responsible. We don't want to have to roll anything forward. We want to address it this year so that next year's budget is very clean and we can move forward.
Okay. And I also have another question, like for schools, like I know my school, we were supposed to have like a renovation for our auditorium and bathrooms. So would the budget deficit like affect those kind of processes? Like are they gonna get paused, renovations and other things and get recontinued in 2027?
Yeah. So my guess is, and I would have to check on O'Brien's in particular, but my guess is those are all things we contract and bid out well in advance. So those would already be going and ongoing. So my guess is no, that those would
Oh.
continue. But I will make sure that we follow up on that one in particular.
Okay, and lastly, so you said how like the budgets affect like schools in general, not classrooms. So does that also include like resources like computers and science labs and stuff like that? Or is it just like overall the school thing?
Yeah, it really wouldn't be anything that's a
Okay.
student resource, right? Like
Okay.
some picture like what a student would use. classroom supplies or things like refresh with technology. Like it wouldn't touch those things.
Okay, I was worried about that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Those are excellent questions.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Yep, I try.
It's good.
I'm very much looking forward to the upcoming budget meetings because it sounds like they're going to be a lot of really insightful inquiries and follow-up. So thank you for the clarification, Superintendent, on the spending. I just want to echo Member Polanco Garcia on how important it is for families to understand, and the letter that went out was very robust, but not necessarily as accessible. And so I think thinking about how we communicate those things just as clearly as we just did is really helpful. Also want to echo Ms. Noor's thanks for the update on the students impacted by the impending school closures. Would love that to be as much of a standing update as we can, as I know Chief Stanislaus and her team and the whole BPS community is really being thoughtful about that support. While you were talking about other school options and schools visiting the sites to welcome students, I was also just thinking that, it's so important that students are able to visit the sites as well, and, to really get a sense of the schools. And I know I've talked before about our own websites and directories for schools, and I was very excited to see that there has been some refreshing of those pages, and at least for high schools now they all do link to their own individual website, so that I just wanted to applaud that improvement. There's just a lot more to be able to understand from schools with the improved layout there as folks do some shopping. And then lastly on my end, just continued bright spots. The MLK celebration for BPS looked amazing. I was at a celebration at Faneuil Hall on Monday, co-sponsored by the Museum of African American History and the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra, and just wanted to do a BPS shout out of the keynote speaker from that event, who is the current Boston Poet Laureate and librarian at the Lee School, Emmanuel Apong-Yeboah, who was absolutely incredible at that event. Very, very proud that he is part of our faculty. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Torres.
Yeah, I just want to thank Superintendent for being so clear about what the budget's going to look like. I'm looking forward to knowing and understanding a better way of what was cut on the budget and because I can't speak to something that I don't know right now, but I'm looking forward to see what programs and what services were cut from the previous budget to this budget and how that affects our families and our students.
Yes, the budget process, thank you, Member Torres, it's an important point. And it's something as we go through probable orgs and those decisions get made at the school level and the district level, we roll that information together. And that February 4th is really sort of the kickoff to that. And then we separate out the hearings to the schools and central, so we can really try to make that information as clear as possible. But you're right, from all your years in BPS, the budget is one of the most important things we do. And so we do spend a lot of time on it and are happy to answer whatever questions members will have. I'm sure new members like yourself will get a lot of attention and time from Chief Bloom and his staff as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there's no more comments or questions, I'll now entertain a motion to receive the superintendent's report. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Pavex, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Alkins,
Yes.
Mr. Peralta,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Ms. Torres,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, Ms. Garrett,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
The report is approved.
Thank you. We'll now move on to general public comment. Ms. Pavex?
Thank you, Chair. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to address the school committee on school-related issues, questions on specific school matters are referred to the superintendent. Questions on policy matters may be discussed by the committee later. The meeting will feature 2 public comment periods, with the first comment period limited to 1 hour. After 1 hour, anyone who hasn't testified will have the opportunity to do so at the end of the meeting. We have 6 speakers this evening. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak, and I will remind you when you have 30 seconds remaining. Please feel free to email your comments for distribution to the committee. Speakers may not reassign their time to others. The time that an interpreter uses for English interpretation will not be deducted from the speaker's allotted time. Please direct your comments to the chair and refrain from addressing individual school committee members or district staff. Please note the comments of any public speaker do not represent the Boston Public Schools or the Boston School Committee. Please state your name, affiliation, and where you live before you begin. Please sign into Zoom using the same name you registered with for public comment, and be ready to unmute and turn on your camera when it's your turn to speak. Please raise your virtual hand when I call your name. To support interpretation, please speak slowly and clearly. We will need our Spanish interpreter for this first public speaker. I will call the names. Our speakers tonight is Isabella Avedano Porras, John Mudd, Cheryl Buckman, Courtney Feely Karp, Deidre Manning, and Sequoia Craig. Isabella Avedano Porras. And if we have our interpreter ready. Our interpreter, is he in the meeting?
I am, but I don't know if you can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
It's okay. Go ahead, Isabela. Buenas tardes para todos. Mi nombre es Isabela. Soy estudiante de Bata East Boston y vengo a ser la voz de todos mis compañeros.
Hola, mi nombre es Grecia, soy estudiante de Bata. Venimos a hacer la voz juntas para hablar sobre el tema que tocamos.
Por favor, pueden parar para que hagan la interpretación.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Isabella and Grecia. We're here representing our classmates to talk about the following issues.
Okay. En la inauguración de nuestra escuela, en donde tuvimos la visita de nuestra alcaldesa y personal administrativo de Boston Public School, se nos reconoció como el futuro de Boston.
During our school's opening night, where we have the presence of Mayor Wu and BPS staff, we were recognized as the future of Boston.
Sentimos que la escuela es algo de prioridad. No estamos de acuerdo a que nos quiten nuestro support y menos reducir nuestras clases y beneficios.
We feel that school should be a priority, and we are not okay with classes and support being reduced and we losing benefits.
Sentimos mucha tristeza al saber que personas tan buenas con nosotros tengan que dejar nuestro espacio cuando ellos simplemente han sido una parte fundamental en nuestro crecimiento general.
We are saddened to see people, staff that support us and has been crucial in our development have to leave.
Cada estudiante siente una frustración al darse cuenta de esa situación.
Every student feels frustration when they notice the situation.
Todo el staff de Vara es importante para nosotros. Son personas que vemos como refugio, personas muy importantes y nos atrevemos a decir que son una familia para cada uno de nosotros.
We consider every person of the staff at Bata as part of our family. They bring refuge to us, a sense of home, and it's really important for the sense of community in the school.
Porque nosotros tenemos que estar preguntando por un derecho. Porque quitarnos el apoyo que ustedes tuvieron en el transcurso de su vida escolar.
Why should we be asking for something that is a right? Why should we be asking for something that you had when you were on the public school system?
Es algo muy duro para nosotros llegar a ese país solo buscando la oportunidad de estudiar y de ser profesionales.
It's hard enough to be in this country and try to progress and study and be professionals.
Sin nuestros profesores, ¿de qué forma vamos a llegar donde ustedes están hoy?
If we don't have our teachers, how are we supposed to get to the place that you are right now?
Ellos son nuestro puente al éxito.
They are our bridge to success.
Es algo muy duro para nosotros llegar a este país solo buscando la oportunidad de estudiar. Oh, perdón. Acabo de enterarme en la reunión de School Site Council que recortarán más de $1 millón de mi escuela.
I just found out that there's going to be a $1 million budget cut from our school.
Y eso significa que recortarán a 13 personas de nuestra familia.
And that means that 13 people from our family or school family is getting laid off.
Algo que no queremos que pase y estamos demasiado frustrados por eso.
Something that we don't want to see and we get really frustrated about.
Exigimos que nuestra voz sea escuchada y que se revise el presupuesto en el cual harán un recorte de 13 personas entre maestros y staff esencial para nuestro día a día en Bata.
We demand that the budget be looked at because we don't think that there's a reason for 13 people between teachers and essential staff to be laid off.
Como personas residentes de la ciudad de Boston y quienes movemos la economía local, merecemos inversión en nuestro capital intelectual y humano.
As part of the Boston community and the moving part of the economy, we feel that we deserve the investment in our academic and human development.
Gracias por su atención, gracias por escucharnos, que tengan una buena noche.
Thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening to us. Have a great night.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Mudd. John Mudd, please accept the prompt. You can start.
Okay, sorry, I'm technologically challenged. So, greetings and welcome and thanks to the new members, Lydia Torres and Franklin Peralta. As the committee begins a new year with these new members, I would hope that you would reconsider and revise BPS's approach in two areas. First, home language instruction for multilingual learners. BPS has now assigned 90% of multilingual students into classes with English-only instruction with ESL through its SEI and inclusive education programs. Less than 10% of students are in dual language programs. This strategy has failed to provide MLs with an opportunity to learn. Over 90% of multilingual students are failing to reach state grade-level content proficiency standards on MCAS tests in reading and math. And the access tests show that the percent of students reaching English language learning targets falls off dramatically in grades 5 and above, where academic content and not just conversation is essential. Research shows that bilingual programs which use instruction in the home language have better outcomes than assigning students to English-only classes with ESL. Yet BPS still lives in the outmoded Question 2 era of English-only instruction for the vast majority of multilingual students. BPS needs to devise a long-term plan to provide bilingual education to its multilingual students, to develop a cadre of bilingual teachers and paras, and to encourage parents to use their home language in speaking and reading to their children. Building on the foundation of the asset of home language is a better way to learn academic English and provide the basis for biliteracy for those students and families who want it, including multilingual learners with disabilities, which you'll hear about later. Second, engagement with school communities in planning facilities proposals. No one who heard the painful testimony of parents, students, and teachers about the latest school closings and mergers in the recent school committee meetings could say there isn't a better way to engage families in the process. It was heartrending. In the current BPS approach, BPS staff develops facilities proposals internally, brings them to the school committee, and only then
30
involves school
seconds.
communities in the implementation of those plans. This is a formula that promotes mistrust. It is disrespectful. BPS should involve school communities in the planning of proposals, not just in their implementation. That is what the racial equity planning tool calls for. It has not happened. It should happen. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudd. Our next speaker is Cheryl Buckman.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Buckman. I'm a parent to a 7th grader at the Ruth Batson Academy, parent lead at the Dever, and resident of South Boston. I'm here not only as a parent, but as a witness to what has happened to our school communities over the past 11 months. 7 schools have closed, each one a place where children learned, educators built trust, and families found stability. Parents, students, teachers, and community members fought to be heard, and yet those schools were still closed. I think of the students at the Dever who struggled with reading and learning English, but came to school every day because it felt safe and supportive. I think of those educators who spent years building relationships with families, only to see those connections severed. The closures are not just data, they are live disruptive, trust broken, and neighborhoods changed forever. So I ask of this question. After witnessing the closures and seeing our voices struggle to be heard, does the voice of the community truly matter? If the answer is yes, it must matter in meaningful ways. Engagement must begin before closures are proposed, not after decisions feel predetermined. Families and staff must be included from the start. The district must provide clear and accessible information in all languages, explaining not only enrollment and finances, but how decisions affect ELL supports, reading interventions, and social emotional resources. Shared decision-making must be done in real time with parents, students, educators, and community members, having influence, not just advisory roles. Before any closure is finalized, co-designed alternatives must be explored to give schools a real chance to stabilize. And finally, communities need accountability to see how their input shape decisions and remain involved as changes are implemented. These steps won't undo the past harm, but they are essential to rebuilding trust and ensuring future changing, strengthening, rather than fracturing our school communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Courtney Filicarp, is not in the meeting, so we will continue with Deidre Manning.
Good evening. My name is Deirdre Manning. I'm a Dorchester resident, former parent, and single parent of 2 public school children. I want to start off my testimony by saying how disappointed I am that the school committee voted to close the Henderson Upper School and the transition program. As a former member of that community, I am really disheartened and disappointed that those families who really don't have other options find themselves left behind. Today, I wanted to continue on my frequent testimony about exam school policy and equity to say that the changes that were recently implemented no longer have a target on the back of non-Title I students who previously were at risk of complete elimination and certainly had choices reduced. But this new policy will continue to suppress enrollment in tiers 3 and 4. The reason why this is happening is that they're the same number of seats per tier, and there are many more applicants in tiers 3 and 4 than there are in tiers 1 and 2. So this change prevents non-Title I students from being eliminated, but the likely result will be large drop of Title I school students being admitted. I want the members of the public to be aware that if you were formerly a Murphy student or a Quincy student or some other school from BPS that frequently sent a lot of students to exam schools, you are going to be very disappointed in April. I predict that fewer than 40% of these students in 3 and 4 will be admitted, and 80% or more in tiers 1 and 2 will be admitted. There are also adverse testing conditions that persist for non-BPS students, and there have been no changes in the implementation of the policy that rectify things like standards-based grades, the GPA conversion. BPS 5th graders have a special process that converts their grades. This is not allowed for non-BPS students. I can say for my older daughter, 2 years ago, this lowered her composite score by 4 points. This is ridiculous. All students should be on an equal playing field, and this should not be allowed. This is something that could be changed tomorrow. I feel like there's examples of students who are maligned because they weren't BPS students, and I can use the Holmes as an example. That's a school that's up and coming. They're on the agenda tonight for actually receiving some money to change the teacher's room, and that's fantastic. But 10 years ago, nobody wanted to send their students to the Holmes, and for good reason. The testing results for their students were abysmal. There were not very many options. There's a new leader there, and it's great. She's bringing lots of changes. There are lots of extracurriculars and programs for their students, and people now want to send their kids to the Holmes. But you shouldn't demonize a parent who didn't want to send his or her child 10 years ago and say, well, they're not loyal to BPS, so they're not going to get a special process to get into an exam school. It's not right. Please, school committee members, fix this problem.
Your time is up. Thank you. Our next speaker is Sequoia Craig.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come forward and...
Could you please start your video?
Yep, 1 second.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So my name is Sequoia Craig. I'm a parent of a disabled child at the McKinley. He has emotional needs also. And I just want to say, united we stand, divided we fall. And I have seen how these children are absolutely crushed by the closing of their schools. These are scholars, these are creatives, these are young people who are trying to thrive in society, and they are being targeted in ways that is inhumane. And to say that, you guys want to merge schools to have a greater number of enrollment, that's not going to happen because these children are so broken. And this is just a very disheartening, discouraging, dismantling situation for children who are in need. They're in distress, they're neglected, they're rejected, they're overlooked, while everyone else in their respectful positions can say congratulations or welcome on board. They are getting condolences and they're shedding tears and they're going home and they're in agony, they're in pain, they're just going through so much emotional turmoil. And now their education is being stripped away from them and they're being forced to do things that they're not aware of what the future holds for them. The future is so unpredictable for these children, and they have no support, they have no love, and they're bringing in so much money, they're bringing in so much for these staff and the people on board to give them a proper structure. But I guess we're on, these children, their foundation is on sinking ground. This is not a solid foundation. They're on quicksand and they're being sucked up, they're being devoured. And I hope you guys honestly can sleep well at night, knowing that all these lives are being crushed as you guys are just elevated, being paid, and doing what you have to do. Thank you respectfully. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Chair, that concludes for public comment for tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Carvex. And thank you to those of you who spoke this evening and shared your perspectives. Your testimony is very important to us. Our first action item this evening is the grants for approval totaling $1,072,323.50. Now I'd like to turn it over to the superintendent for any final comments.
Great, Chair. So, thank you. So there's 8 grants tonight for the members' consideration. As Chair said, this totals $1,070,000 approximately. The largest is a fair share earmarks grant through the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE. These were earmarks from state legislators for particular Boston Public Schools as part of the state budget process. These total approximately $412,500, and they apply for school years 2025 through 2028. These funds in particular will serve approximately 4,000 students at the Shaw Taylor Elementary, the Hennigan K-8, the Holmes Elementary, Orchard Gardens, Up Academy Holland, Munice Academy, Umana Academy, and Warren Prescott K-8. This funding will reserve various earmarks for educational projects to support students at every level of education, ranging from affordable childcare, learning to read and building innovation, high-quality classrooms, capital improvements and equipment upgrades, things like pool repair, playground equipment updates, gymnasium, construction, new staging, seating, it varies. We're really grateful to our state delegation for their support and for these earmarks. There's also a $390,000 approximate grant from Mass CEC HVAC Climate Critical Workforce Training Grant. This will serve 60 BPS students and 40 Roxbury Community College student adult evening students at Madison Park. The purpose of this grant is to increase enrollment in Madison Park's Chapter 74 HVAC program from 24 students to 60 students. It'll also expand infrastructure, upgrade HVAC equipment, and accommodate the RCC program there. The remaining grants are totaling just over approximately $273,000. One is a Mass Fresh Coordination and Optimization of Resources and Partnerships grant. This is a new competitive grant totaling $85,500, serving 46,000 students district-wide this school year. It establishes a new full-time farm school manager position to promote healthy eating habits and support sustainable food systems within the community. There's an $80,000 Mass Grad Promising Practices grant serving 380 students at Boston Adult Tech Academy, or what we call BADA, Boston International High School, and Newcomers Academy to provide supplementary support for dropout prevention and re-engagement activities. It is designed specifically for high schools with high number of dropouts. It'll pay for initiatives such as after-school tutoring, alumni mentoring programs, and vacation academies during the school breaks. There's also an AMD computer lab funding, which is a new donation totaling $47,935, serving 100 students at the John D. O'Brien School of Math and Science. This funding will support the purchase of laptops that will encourage STEM learning and digital literacy. The Deeper Learning Implementation Grant, totaling $32,000, serves 950 students at Samuel Adams and Donald McKay schools. The funding will advance the school's deeper learning instructional priorities by strengthening systems, structures, and staff capacity. You'll also see the EdVestors 25-26 Career Pathway Planning Grant increase. This is really a continuation. It's a competitive grant, it's a continuation grant, but it increases $17,800. So it brings it to a total of $35,300 in the current school year. This serves 4,000 students and 17 staff and teachers district-wide. This funding supports a year of planning as a key part of the Office of Specialized Services to support planning processes with school-based pathway teams in CTE and early college. And lastly, the Heart of America Haluman Daris Library Award. This is a new award totaling $10,000 this school year. It serves more than 300 students and 100 staff at the Hennigan K-6 elementary school. This award will pay for library upgrades, materials such as new books and other kinds of materials in the library. It also will fund author visits and replace any kind of damaged or lost furniture. You will also see in the packet an in-kind donation. This is for $500,000 in kind from the Gensler architectural firm for a remodel of the Teachers Lounge at the Holmes Innovation School. This would include architectural and design services, new furniture, appliances, and fixtures, technology upgrades, cabinetry, and other enhancements. So for all of these grants, we're very thankful and appreciative, and we would ask the committee's affirmative vote.
Great. Thank you. I'll now open it up to members for questions and comments. Mr. Peralta?
Thank you so much, Chair Robinson. I would like to know if any of those grants, if there is any string attached to them in the kind of making BPS to buy any products or services for any of these organizations making those grants, or sharing students' data with any of those, anything like that. Thank you.
Sure. I know Marcel is on, but in general, we don't have grant situation when we have a vendor. So the answer is likely no to that, unless there's a disclosure of a sort, which Marcella would know. And then as far as the other in terms of us requiring purchasing, no, other than what's laid out in the, in the grant, and then we would go through procurement as we normally would do. Marcella, do you know, we usually vet this, but do you happen to have any sense of whether there's anything on here for which we are, have a different kind of relationship with?
I think you're talking about the MDA donation. This organization is giving the school some funds to purchase computers because the ones that are in the school don't really support the learning of these programs. This equipment was the contract was vetted by the legal department just to make sure that there is no strings attached, like to respond to your question. And also the equipment that is proposed was actually reviewed by OIIT. It was actually some adjustments made to the equipment they were proposing to accommodate to what the requirements of BPS in terms of the equipment itself and the software and all that. So that was all reviewed by legal and OIIT before we even accept these funds. I hope that responds your question.
Yes. Can you spell out the thing that you are using initials for it?
AMD is the donation, AMD.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Dr. Alkins.
Yes, thank you for the report. And I'm particularly interested in the Mass Grad Promising Practices grant, because I know that I think the eligibility for that is, a percentage of your school have to have, or you have to have a particular percentage of either dropouts or a particular number, not just percentage. And I'm wondering how both Binka and Bada are sort of headed toward that threshold. Like with this, are we reaching a point where they may not have to apply for this grant, or is this something that we foresee for multiple years in the future?
Yeah. So I think the two different schools, BADA is alternative education for our 18 to 22-year-old multiple MLE students. And what we see is often the students attending there are working or trying to work at the same time as going to school. There's just lots of family surviving kinds of tensions there of them needing like competing priority, and so they are more at risk for dropout. They also sometimes age out, and sometimes that then requires referral to adult ed. It really depends, like in any given year, what the population looks like for BADA. But they would be a school I would expect would be on there on a regular basis, and though making good progress, particularly with chronic absenteeism, trying to work toward that. Just by the nature of the population that they're serving, they're going to be susceptible to the dropout. I think with Binka and Newcomer Academy, it is similar, right, in the sense that they are serving our multilingual learners but at younger age, and then newcomers to us. And this is a population that, with everything that's going on right now, we're doing everything that we can support. It's a very unstable enrollment population right now. So I wouldn't, Dr. Elkins, be able to tell you like next year, I think that they would exit that, because I think it's very situational year to year for them with everything that's going on right now federally. But both of them much deserving of the grant, and I think will use the grant as they have in the past to make sure that it's not just the dropout, it's also the re-engagement of the student. And sometimes that means attaching to mental health, social worker needs, sometimes even the work component, getting the students to stabilize with a work placement. So they use this in a variety of ways, career development and so forth, as all as mitigation for dropout. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the grants as presented. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Parvex, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Alkins,
Yes.
Mr. Peralta,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Ms. Torres,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, Ms. Garrett,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
The grants are approved.
Our second action item for tonight is the in-kind donation with a total estimated value of $500,000. Now I'd like to turn it over to the superintendent for any final comments.
Chair, I don't have anything else, other than we fully support it in what I said in the previous comments.
Great, thank you. I'll now open it up to questions and comments from the committee. Just want to say, I think this is a great opportunity for the school and look forward to seeing the finished product. If there's nothing further, I'll now entertain a motion to approve the in-kind donation as presented. Is there a motion? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Parvex, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Alkins,
Yes.
Mr. Peralta,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Ms. Torres,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, Ms. Garrett,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
The in-kind donations are approved.
Great, thank you. Our first report this evening is the Elliott K-8 School Innovation Plan. Let's aim to keep this presentation for 6 minutes. I'd like to remind our presenters to speak at a slower pace to assist our interpreters. I will now turn it over to the superintendent.
Sure. Actually, Chair, could I just ask if we could, before we begin the Elliott, if Simone, Dr. Wright, if she could actually have an opportunity. She's working on technical issues, but she should be on.
All righty, thank you. Welcome.
First of all, I just want to say I'm sorry, but we got the Zoom to work. I do just first want to say thank you, Superintendent Skipper, for the amazing introduction. Um, and good evening, Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Scarrett, and the other members of the school committee. At this point, I believe I've had a touch point with each of you one-on-one. Um, but I do just want to acknowledge how excited I really am to be a member of Team BPS. It truly has been a great 13 days. And I have met with a number of different teams. I've been to 13 schools and I've been able to engage with our educators through a number of different avenues. It is truly evident that our belief regarding giving each student what they need is more than a slogan or words. People are actually doing the work of refining how we support our educators in schools to advance our charge around a high quality student experience where every kid is positioned to be successful in their life post BPS. I am excited to be able to work alongside each of you under the leadership of Superintendent Skipper to ensure BPS is truly the best district across the Commonwealth and the nation. Thank you again for just allowing me to say a few words. I apologize for my technological challenges this evening.
Now, Dr. Wright, we're not going to put you on the spot, but there is a pretty important football game coming up Sunday. It does happen to be your alma mater, hometown, and or not hometown, but your most recent hometown in Boston. Just something to mull over, like in terms of the support.
Thank you for acknowledging that, Superintendent.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Right, so we are ready to move on to the Elliott Innovation School.
So thank you. So at this time, I'll ask school leader Tracy Walker Griffith to put her camera on. She's going to be joining us for a presentation on the Elliott K-8 Innovation Schools Innovation Plan Renewal, and that will cover 2026 to 2031. Hard to think about 2031. First of all, the Elliott is one of the district's 25 autonomous schools, which also includes pilot schools, innovation schools, and Horace Mann charter schools. The 2026-2031 plan is focused, as Tracy will share, on closing opportunity gaps for English language learners, students with disabilities, and students of color. We are going to ask the members to support this plan at the upcoming school committee meeting, not at this one for a vote. Before I turn it over to Tracy, I also just want to acknowledge that she's going to be retiring at the end of the school year. Truth be told, in 1997, when I came back into the BPS, Tracy was a teacher at the time, and I was in OIT, and I got to support her, and she was with her first child. And so we've had a long history of knowing one another and being able to see her amazing work throughout the district for years. She's been with us and dedicated for 34 years in the BPS, and she's led the Elliott in particular for the past 19. So that's pretty impressive in and of itself. And, she's just been a person with vision and consistency and dedication in all that time, both in the district and at the Elliott. When she first began her principalship, the Elliott served just 150 students, and it ranked in the 9th percentile on state accountability measures. Today, the Elliott enrolls nearly 800 students across 3 campuses, and it's reached the 90th percentile in school-wide performance, making it the highest performance of the large K-8 schools in Massachusetts this year. In addition to these remarkable results, Tracy's also recognized as a pioneer in the use of generative AI, particularly in the areas of teaching and learning. And she's been sharing her expertise with her colleagues, with our district office, and we look forward to continuing to learn from her even in her retirement. She's just a mentor for many of the principals, particularly in their, when they first come in, and for veteran principals, known for her creativity, her leadership, most of all for her student outcomes. That is what Tracy's known for. So at this point, I just wish Tracy all the best in this next phase of life. And I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Skipper. Good evening, Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Scarrett, again, Superintendent Skipper and school committee members. My name is Tracy Walker Griffith, and I am the proud principal of the Elliott Innovation School in the North End of Boston. Tonight, I am joined by Jennifer Law, who is an Elliott parent and an innovation planning member, as well as Weijing Wu, also an Elliott parent and a lead educator at the Elliott School, as well as an Elliott Innovation Planning member. We are here to request your approval of our innovation plan renewal for 2026 through 2031. So many of you know, innovation schools develop plans to create ideal conditions for serving students using autonomies from standard policies. Every 5 years, in this case, this is our 5th year, the school committee votes to renew these plans. This renewal keeps our current conditions in place with updates based on our learning and community input. Our 28-member Innovation Plan Committee, representing families, community members, and educators across race and language groups, met beginning in winter 2024 through this fall 2025 to revise our plan. Our faculty voted to approve this renewal in December, and we now bring it to your school committee for approval. This renewal represents the continuation of a transformational journey that the superintendent mentioned that began in 2007 when our school was state identified as underperforming. 5 years after that, in 2012, we became an innovation school to reimagine what would be possible for our community. Today, U.S. News and World Report ranks the Elliott School #1 in Boston and #13 in Massachusetts, proof that innovation grounded in equity accelerates achievement for all students. Our 2026 through 2031 plan centers on 3 innovative practices that personalize and accelerate learning: AI as an equity accelerator, unified multi-tiered systems of support, and daily enrichment for every student. AI as an equity accelerator is woven throughout all 6 autonomies of our updated plan. As a national leader in responsible K-8 AI integration, we're using AI to keep all students moving forward at their highest potential, while giving teachers back precious time for the human connection that we know matters most. Most critically, AI democratizes access to personalized learning, ensuring that individualized instruction, previously available only through intensive one-on-one tutoring, is now accessible to every student every day. We are preparing our students and our educators for a future we're building together. Unified multi-tiered systems of support continues to give us a laser-like focus and our flexibility across our 3-building campus. Our learning specialists aren't siloed by grade level or building. They're deployed where students need them the most, when they need them the most. Real-time data cycles across all 3 campuses help us identify students who need support earlier and more accurately. Teachers and specialists review progress regularly. When a student needs a support, we know within days, not months. The result? Every student gets the right support at the right time to keep accelerating. Daily enrichment for every Elliott student happens through our Elliott Play, Innovate, Create philosophy, EPIC, which means that every student, not just some, experiences project-based learning, computational thinking, AI literacy, and much more. Students are building transferable skills, discovering the joy of learning, and developing the social-emotional competencies that cross-curricular work demands. This prepares all our students for futures we can't yet imagine. The message from our community was clear: maintain our innovation, expand what's working, and continue leading. Tonight, you're not just approving a plan for one school, you're investing in a model that proves innovation grounded in equity transforms outcomes for all students, a model ready to scale across the Boston Public Schools. We have continued to do the hard work of iteration. We have proven the results, and we are ready and continue to be ready to share what we've learned. We respectfully request your approval. What we've built at Elliott shows what's possible for every student in Boston, and we stand ready to continue to lead and support this vision across our amazing Boston Public Schools district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker-Griffith. I'll now open it up to the committee for questions and comments. And I know before we begin, I think Ms. Torres wanted to make a statement. Go ahead.
Due to my relationship with the Elliott School, of abundance of cautions, I want to recusing myself and will not engage tonight's report of future decisions. My daughter works there and my granddaughter works there. And Tracy's my friend.
Righty. Thank you very much. All right. Questions, comments? Mr. Peralta.
Thank you so much, Chair Robinson, and congratulations, Tracy, for your upcoming retirement. Well deserved. Because we cannot clone you yet, we hope that you will definitely stick around so we can keep learning from you and the great place that you are running with your team. I am interested in learning a little bit more, maybe with a concrete example from one of your classroom, one of your students, about the AI integration, especially as an equity accelerator, coming from like the two streams about AI and, if you want, technology in general, but especially AI. One stream will say, this is the end of humankind as we know it. And the other stream will say, we just need to replace all the teachers and let the computers educate the kids. Obviously, it has to be something in the middle. So if you can give us maybe an example of how you've seen that in one of your students, AI being an equity accelerator. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. We have been on a journey as an innovation school. Part of that title is we are committed to incubating innovative ideas. And the idea of AI for the last over 18 months has been our commitment to think of technology in service of learning, not as the answer. And I think when we are identifying problems to be solved, we're thinking about how can we accelerate the learning of our students with the use of AI. So specifically, I can say almost over a year ago, we started out in Denver with 11 other schools across the country, working together and thinking about the ways in which we could leverage our instructional focus, which was to continue to accelerate our learning for our most underserved students, our students with disabilities and our multilingual learner students, and how to use AI for our teachers. So specifically, we recognized that our teachers were unable to get to, say, 100 students writing and give them feedback. So we worked together with our other schools and with these schools across the country to identify using AI to create feedback for students. And then we worked with our students to talk about and give them an opportunity to give us feedback on the feedback they were receiving. All the same time, identifying through our data and our writing data, because we recognized that we needed to accelerate all learning. And so that there was clearly a need for us as a school community to find leverage points, specifically using AI to accelerate the learning. So our data over the past 12 months has shown that our students, all students, but particularly our multilingual learner students and our students with disability, are are accelerating at a pace that has been unmatched in years before. So we recognize that AI is not the solution. It's giving us an opportunity to think about how can we create space for our teachers to be the lead learners, as well as giving our students opportunities to feel like they are part of the process. In addition to that, I will add one more thing. This summer, we launched a program with our students using PlayLab, which is an app creator, and looking at our community and problems to be solved and working alongside City Year volunteers, leading educators, and recognizing that our students are the future and that they need the opportunity to be critical consumers of technology. And as a school community, we need to give our teachers that opportunity as well as our students. And Dr. Simone Wright was here last week, and she was meeting with a fifth grader. And that fifth grader was talking about the ways in which they're also now using GEMS and writing tutors to get feedback and how to identify if that feedback is accurate. And this is that ethicality and the AI bias. And it's a very exciting time, and it's also a very challenging time to ensure that we always say that the AI is not stealing your learning. And when Dr. Wright asked one of our fifth graders, what should she be thinking about? They said she needs to be thinking about how all students can have access, as well as knowing the dangers that come with using AI. And so we're really excited to leaning into that learning edge as a school community and sharing that with schools across our district.
Thank you. Dr. Elkins.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And actually, that was going to be my follow-up to understand a little bit more about how teachers and students are sort of understanding the ethical implications around AI integration and how they are actually able to articulate it. And just what have been some of the takeaways that I think you all have learned from that, particularly probably the older ages of the students.
That's great. Thank you. I think part of it in we are a K-8 school, so ensuring that we're thinking of AI literacy and the ethicality of AI use, not only for our educators, but building out that family work and working with different organizations, Day of AI, and working with other organizations to continue to lean into the challenges of our current climate around using AI. I think our oldest students, choice and voice has always been at the forefront and the foundation of the Elliott School. So ensuring that students are part of the planning. So the grades 6 through 8 are really thinking about their responsible use and having, like that stoplight and thinking about the guardrails and the guidelines that not only the district is putting in place, but as a community, what does that look like? The idea of our teachers using AI has completely shifted how they're thinking about the work, whether it's re-inspiring a teacher who's been teaching for 30 years or a brand new teacher, that this is a newer way of looking at the work. And I think that's an important piece to, as we move forward, as not only as a school, but as a district, to think about how do we ensure coherence and consistency around messaging, around the ethical use of AI, and that teaching students to critically evaluate the outputs and not accept them blindly. And that's part of education, not only for our students, but our families and our teachers.
Thank you. And to follow up on that, are you seeing that that teachers are feeling supported perhaps in the development of their lesson plans alongside of that, like as they're using AI? Because of course, as we're thinking about, I'm pretty sure all teachers are thinking about like the lack thereof that they have to develop lesson plans, even though they're given that time, right? But there's never enough time to do it. So I'm actually very curious as to how teachers have been able to start to integrate that into their planning and their support.
So I think what we have identified, and I think it's showing up in our mid-year map data, is that our clear connection to lesson planning, but looking at data and using AI to create the targeted small groups to accelerate learning has been unmatched. It's clear to us that when we meet together, and we, as an innovation school, we do have a work election that allows us to vote in for more professional development hours, that clearly the time that teachers are spending together and thinking through the work has been so impactful that we're seeing it in both the formative and the qualitative, but the quantitative data that we're getting. In fact, today we had an instructional leadership team meeting right before this, and teachers were looking at all of that data, thinking about, I'm going to go back at my grade level, and we're going to use Claude, or we're going to use Gemini to continue to grow that. PlayLab, which is another app that we're using, our students are also learning how to create apps to support, but also for our teachers to continue to grow their practice. And we don't call it, best practice, we call it next practice, because we want to continue to accelerate the learning of our teachers as well. But we'd love to have you come over and visit. Our kids love talking and sharing their learning, as well as our adults as well.
Thank you. Ms. Polanco Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yo quiero decir a la directora Tracy que muchas gracias por este trabajo tan hermoso, tan lindo que ha hecho y ha estado haciendo.
I'd like to say thank you very much for Director Tracy for that wonderful, beautiful job that you're doing in this regard of artificial intelligence.
Leyendo la historia me di cuenta que antes del 2007 esta escuela tenía muy bajo rendimiento y estaban incluso considerando el cierre.
I was actually able to look at the data, and with regards to the performance this particular school had before 2007, the elite itself, that it was a school that was not performing very well to the point that it was considered closing the doors.
Y cuando usted llega a la escuela con esa visión transformadora, innovadora, se ve el cambio.
However, all it took is that you came to school with this vision, this transformative, innovative school. So the change is palpable. We see it.
Y pude ver en la historia que usted que pudo involucrar familias, maestros y comunidad para lograr esto. No lo hizo sola.
I was able to see the teamwork that is behind this. You did not do that job by yourself. You involved families, teachers, the community, as a teamwork to be able to have this product.
Y yo pienso que nosotros tenemos muchas escuelas, ¿verdad?, que necesitan de esa visión suya, de esa forma de pensar en que si nos unimos y buscamos la forma de transformar, de innovar nuestras escuelas, nosotros tendremos mejores resultados para nuestros estudiantes, que al final eso es lo que nosotros queremos.
So we have to see that that vision that you're bringing, that way of thinking, will unite as that transformative way of thinking, that mindset of innovation will transform everything we're doing. And that's something we have to all think about it.
Es impresionante cuando invito al que no haya visto el currículo y la forma que esta escuela trae, la visión que tiene ahora, la transformación, la innovación que tiene ahora, es impresionante. Y poder tener esta cantidad de estudiantes cuando se vio casi a punto al cierre, yo creo que es una historia que motiva a que sí se puede luchar por esas comunidades deprimidas y esas escuelas que tanto necesitan supporting.
It is very interesting how you were able to embed this vision, this innovation that requires multiple actors into the curriculum itself. So I have to say it is a very inspirational story that require us to be united itself to be able to accomplish what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your hard job. Congratulations for your su retiro. Le deseo lo mejor. Descanse, se lo merece. Y gracias por lo que hizo por esta escuela. Thank you so much for your hard job in this.
I would like to congratulate you on your retirement. I would like to wish you the very best and appreciate everything you are doing. Your very well-deserved retirement. I congratulate you and thank you once again for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And it is all the team. It is, I'm sitting here, but there is a village behind me. Thank you.
Welcome.
Principal Walker Griffith, I just want to echo everyone's congratulations on the incredible acceleration and journey of the Elliott. And as a former leader, I can also attest to how generous you and your team have always been with your time and expertise. I know that many other school leaders have you on speed dial and that you have open doors in terms of folks being able to visit the Elliott and learn from the Elliott. That's really my question today as I read the larger plan. And I know there are a lot of really interesting elements of the AI piece, but there are also other things that we've been grappling with for a really long time, like curriculum implementation and, what that looks like and where extensions are needed from the curriculum and where like high fidelity is needed and inclusive practices for students with disabilities and real authentic discourse experiences for multilingual learners, things that you talk about in your plan. Superintendent mentioned that there are a lot of schools with autonomies. There are a lot of other innovation schools. Just wondering your thoughts on formalizing ways to think about scale and to think about really concrete learnings that have come out of the Elliott journey. And I would add to that list something that's been really key as well, which is just securing resources from community partners and business partners, and just really strategic fundraising. That is not something that school leaders always have the time or availability to do, but can really be a game changer for schools. So there really are so many lessons, and wondering how they can be spread more strategically and at scale at the district.
So that's a question that continues to drive the work that we do at our school. As it was mentioned in 2007, and member Polanco Garcia mentioned, we were one of the schools that was on the closure list and, was considered at that time. And my first day was April Fool's Day in 2007. So I often think about when I came into the Elliott School that it was most important that our school felt like a community. And I can say Member Torres I started in April and she came on after I called her and told her where I was. That this was literally a journey. And so your question often does keep me up at night that, I've been here so long because I'm committed to growing. It's not just the Elliott. This is the way schooling should be for every student in Boston. Enrichment, a clear sense of how we look at data. And so when I think of going to scale, I think specifically about what are the tools and resources any school needs, whether they're in a small school of 150 or they're in a school of 800, that it was clearly for us, it was making sure that the systems and structures that support the adult learning and the student learning were always at the forefront of every conversation and every decision that was made, whether it was made by a school site council. When I started, it was not an innovation school, to a governing board. So school governance, all of these pieces are in our district. And I think thinking about meeting schools where they are. We talk about when a student comes in, they need to be accelerated. So when we look at our schools and we think about where they are and where they need to be, I think some of the ways in which we have clearly committed to the adult learning, looking at data, and also leveraging AI as another tool in service of learning, both for the adults and the students, can be brought to scale. So I think, obviously people are talking about that I'm retiring, and no one will ever retire. Once you're an educator forever. That I'm clearly committed to thinking about the ways that the Elliott School and systems and structures at the Elliott that we've taken from other schools, and that others, like, there has to be a sharing of next practice, and that the system can continue to grow and push on that way. And I do want to say that our commitment as a school community has been, for the years that I have been here, and you've talked about, being a mentor, that I think that there is a commitment from our school community to continue to think about ways in which we can support the resource development, the fundraising, that's something that I didn't have to do at the very beginning, because as an underperforming school, they fund all of that work, right? So as a transformation school, and that once you become performing, that money does go away. So thinking about the strategy and structures that need to be in place, that, you talk about knowing, and that's something that has to be committed to by the district and certainly by our school community as well. But there's not one answer, Vice Chair. I think it's an ongoing dialogue that we can continue to have, and past June, because this didn't just happen. There are ways in which we can think of scalable items that could turnkey something in a school that could then lead them to that next practice and accelerate learning. But you'll find it in our data, whether it's in our school climate data and how our kids are feeling, that there's so much rich data in our district that I do think that there's ways for us to scale the work that we're doing within the structures that we have.
Thank you for that, Principal Walker-Griffith. I think there is definitely a balance between that important point around meeting schools where they are and that individualized support, and thinking about how to make things more systemic as a system, and what our professional learning for leaders looks like district-wide, and what the right vehicles and groupings are for those. And so I think that that both are really important, and there are a lot of potential learnings there. So thank you.
So, Ms. Walker-Griffin, I want to join my colleagues in saying thank you for your number of years doing this work. I've had many opportunities to visit the school, to be a reader, to see kids perform, etc., and have always been struck by the joy, the inclusion. And when I think about your work, the fact that you are an innovation school says that you really live up to that title and name, and look forward, particularly with my colleagues, particularly learning more about AI. I know very little about AI other than what I know of ChatGPT. And so would like to hear a little bit more about what is the AI literacy in particular, when you mentioned that as a particular piece of the AI work, and wasn't sure, how many different facets of AI are at work at this moment within the work at the school.
So I think it's really important for us to think about AI as not replacing teachers or not replacing the learning, and thinking about AI literacy specifically, whether we're talking to 3- and 4-year-olds about, you've just picked up your mom's phone and you're using, you're swiping, or you're watching a show and then it shows you another show, that's AI. It's learning about how you're learning, right? So this way that students don't even know that, you know, even when we think about confidentiality and privacy, that's all AI literacy, and the ways that we're thinking intentionally as a school community, but as a district as well, that we need to think about from, you know, we say pre-K to gray, right? What's the ways in which we're intentionally engaging with our community, from our youngest students who are, you know, coding bee-bots and kids building robots, to kids creating writing tutors, and thinking about that is then also thinking about the way in which we communicate our expectations. And the district has done a really great job in working with us as we've kind of thought about what this looks like last year, as we were really racing towards, we're going to try this, we're going to try that, and going slow to go fast is something that we know that if we need to make sure that we don't widen gaps, that we close gaps. And so what's the accessibility that every student needs in our district? And I've heard it on school committee with kids talking about this, like that our students are the voices that we need, our teachers are the voices we need. And as I said, we're working with lots of different organizations. I've mentioned Day of AI because it's an organization that, you know, has free resources for community, for families, for teachers. And we are excited to continue to think about what that looks like. We're working with the Boston Compact, with private, parochial, charter, and public schools, and hosting next week with Day of AI. And so we're continuing to think thoughtfully. It's not a one size fits all. Some teachers are super excited. And so it's thinking about the predictability and the ways in which we engage holistically with our community, not just at the Elliott School, but as we think about, Boston has done, you know, a great job of really turnkey with Zoom and with virtual learning. How do we ensure that we're ensuring that our students and teachers and our families have access to the AI literacy that is available nationwide at the moment?
Again, thank you so much. If there are no further questions, I just want to say thank you, and that the committee will vote on this matter at a later meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Our last two reports this evening focus on special education. We will start with an update from the Office of Specialized Service, followed directly by a Boston Special Education Parent Advisory Council, also called SPEDPAC, update. Let's aim to keep the first portion of the presentation to 5 minutes and the second to 20. I will also like to remind our presenters to speak at a slower pace to assist our interpreters. I will now turn it over to the superintendent.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair. So in a few minutes, as Chair said, we're going to hear an update from Boston Special Education Parent Advisory Council, what we call SPEDPAC. We will be joined by Chair Edith Bazil and Chief of Specialized Services, Kay Seal, who will each give a presentation. As you know, the state regulations require SPEDPAC to advise the school committee on matters that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities. The presentation tonight is meant not only to fulfill that, but to actually go beyond that. Its purpose is to really share SPEDPAC's goals for the year and the important work they seek to do in partnership with the district to achieve these goals. I want to recognize SPEDPAC's leadership, their advocacy on behalf of the district students and their families. SPEDPAC really empowers our BPS parents and caregivers through support and education. They provide a valuable sounding board for me and members of my team on issues related to special education, particularly at our quarterly meetings. I also want to thank Chair Bazil and the entire SPEDPAC Executive Board for your collaboration. We look forward to continuing our work together with SPEDPAC on their strategic goals, which we will hear about shortly. Before we hear from Chair Bazil, Chief Seal will provide strategic updates up from the Office of Specialized Services on how we are serving our students with disabilities. She will highlight the district's progress as well as some of the challenges. Also, as we said in our presentation on inclusive education in December, We are in our second year of a 4-year phased-in plan following an initial planning year. As a reminder, inclusive education is built on 4 pillars that require BPS to shift its practice to meet the needs of all students as they learn alongside their peers. The implementation of inclusive education was an important part of the Systemic Improvement Plan, or SIP, that we had with DESE. The SIP concluded in June of 2025, but our plan and our commitment to inclusive education continues. And as we continue to implement and manage this shift, we appreciate SPEDPAC's feedback and commitment to our students. The presentation will also address concerns we have heard from families in public comment and community meetings about where their children will attend school following upcoming mergers and closures. Families want to know that their children will have access to the appropriate programming, especially for students with disabilities from our closing or merged communities, schools from those communities. And as I mentioned earlier in comments about our long-term facilities planning, this work will be student-centered and coordinated directly with receiving school leaders. Our Office of Specialized Services will work individually with students and families to support their transition to a new school, and we're working on the secondary landscape overall to ensure they're prepared to welcome students from closing schools. We'll maintain instructional continuity by moving programs intact where possible and ensure full implementation of students' IEPs at their assigned schools. At this point, Chair, I will now turn it over to Chief Seal and then to Chair Bazil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, School Committee Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Skerritt, school committee members, and our families. I want to thank you, Superintendent Skipper, for framing my presentation for tonight and the opportunity to co-present with the Special Education Parent Advisory Council Chair, Edith Brazil. My name is Kay Seal, and I'm the Chief of Specialized Services. I'm excited to provide some insight into how BPS is supporting students with disabilities in partnership with the Special Education Parent Advisory Council tonight. As I share the next slide, please. It's all about our partnership.
Sorry, but I can't hear.
She's muted, Chair.
Oops, excuse me.
Yeah, we're sorry we lost you, Ms. Seal.
Okay, which part did you lose me?
We lost you from the beginning of the presentation.
Oh, no.
No, just when you put up the slide. So just start about the slide.
You said it's all about our partnership and then went mute.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So it is all about our partnership, and I just wanted to go over our objectives for the presentation. And I wanted to acknowledge that our partnership with SPEDPAC is grounded in the statute. Our work together reflects both a legal responsibility and a shared commitment to equity, transparency, student-centered decision-making. So tonight's presentation will provide an overview, as Superintendent Skipper shared, of the Office of Specialized Services strategic initiatives, including the district's commitment to leveraging resources and supports for more than our 11,000 students with identified disabilities. Chair Brazil and I will discuss our partnership in supporting families and services for students with disabilities in Boston Public Schools. And Ms. Brazil will also share the goals of the SPED Parent Advisory Council for this school year. Next slide, please. In looking at our shifts, I want to acknowledge the connection to the Inclusive Education Plan and the critical components of these shifts. We've seen this before in previous presentations, which I also shared in December. Our work remains grounded in ensuring access to accelerated learning for students with disabilities, which is a continued priority as stated by our superintendent. We're also committed to providing every BPS student with learning experiences that are intellectually engaging and academically rigorous, while we're fostering meaningful connections. Our school's infrastructure supports students with a sense of belonging, student agency, and ensures unfettered access to reach their full potential. In short, we're focused on ensuring that every student in BPS has what they need to succeed both in our classrooms and beyond. Next slide, please. The district has taken several actions to strengthen educator development, ensuring that every student with a disability receives the supports they need through specially designed instruction in the most appropriate, least restrictive environment. I want to highlight two areas: the breadth of the professional learning for educators that we've provided across the variety of roles, and our ongoing commitment to root cause analysis. While every strategy on this slide, such as professional learning, asset-based instruction, and universal entry and exit criteria, has been important, it is the combination of sustained capacity building and intentional data inquiry that has truly strengthened our collective work. Next slide, please. I also want to reflect on last year's DESE accountability system for 2024-2025. As you look at the data, you see that our students are making progress, but our work is not finished. Last year's data shows early gains in strengthening inclusion and support for students with disabilities. The district made progress on 10 of the 16 DESE accountability indicators that you're seeing tonight. We exceeded targets in dropout rate, meeting targets in chronic absenteeism, and improving in graduation. And we celebrate the accomplishments that we have made for our students in access to advanced coursework and also science. Another bright spot is our growth for multilingual learners with disabilities in 10th grade MCAS last year. Our ELA score, we had a growth of 6.3% increase. In our math score, we had a growth of 4.3% increase. In summary, the data shows that students with disabilities are making growth in several areas, particularly in ELA and math at the non-high school levels. However, when we're looking at our high schools, we continue to understand and prioritize that our continued attention in ELA and math and science, that we must expand access to advanced course requirements as well as coursework opportunities. The district will continue to prioritize comprehensive data analysis to align resources and prevent professional learning to ensure that students with disabilities have equitable access to high quality instruction in the least restrictive environment, recognizing that with targeted interventions that our students can achieve at grade level is a focus and guides us in the work that we will be doing this year and throughout the year to come. Next slide, please. When we talk specifically about our strategies in accelerating learning outcomes for students with disabilities, our district cross-functional teams have strengthened systems, staffing, and professional learning to ensure that students with disabilities achieve every day in every school. Schools are supported in delivering full continuum of services from substantially separate to fully inclusive settings to ensure access for students to learn in the least restrictive environment. Through the regional responsive teams, we've initiated IEP teams are bringing the vision of life through the responsive teams professional learning series in advancing student-centered standards aligned with IEPs to improve access and outcomes district-wide. We have engaged 800 educators to date as of the end of December through this professional learning series. Professional development expands our inclusive staffing models and targeted investments in our literacy, our assistive technology, and multilingual learner supports are increasing access to our high-quality instruction and addressing opportunity gaps, particularly in the secondary level. Together, these efforts ensure that students with disabilities and BPS are included, that they're supported, that they're challenged, and provided meaningful access to high-quality instruction every day. Next slide, please. The Office of Specialized Services is very committed in working in close partnership with SPEDPAC our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, and our families. And we'll continue to share our student progress. We'll track implementation milestones and monitor equity impact. Most importantly, we recognize the importance of responsive communication given the diversity of our families in their home language. In the coming months, through family surveys and community events, we will continue to create social opportunities for students and families to keep them informed about the resources in our schools that support access to ensure that our students receive a continuum of services. As we consider families and students' perspectives regarding school closures and the district's long-term facility plans, we'll continue to hold community meetings and listening sessions to engage families as partners in every aspect of their child's transition. Students will also have opportunities to visit our schools closer to their homes, while IEP teams will work with parents to explore options and ensure that services are implemented with fidelity throughout their transitions, regardless of any school changes. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak about how we are supporting families and students with disabilities here in BPS. And I will now invite SPEDPAC Chair Edith Brazil to share the goals of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council for the 25-26 school year.
Thank you so much, Kay, and also thank you, Superintendent Skipper, for that introduction. Good evening, Chair Robinson, members of the school committee, families, collaborators, and interested parties. I want to thank you, the committee, for giving me more than 2 minutes tonight. If I speak a little too fast, it's purely muscle memory. And I also want to I want to lift up Principal Tracy's presentation because it reflects what strong systems make possible. This is the kind of work students deserve across the district, particularly Black, Latino, and multilingual learners with disabilities who are too often left behind. So I want to start on a human note. The images on these slides are not stock photos. They are real BPS students, our students. And that matters because every decision lands on young people who come to school every day ready to learn, belong, yearning for hope, and dreaming about their future. They are hardwired to learn. BPS's collective responsibility is to make sure the system they walk into is worthy of their trust. Tonight starts with what is working, moves into data we cannot sugarcoat, and ends with clear evidence-based recommendations. We will stay grounded in solutions, but we will not soften the truth. Next. SPEDPAC is not an informal advisory group. We are a state-mandated advisory body to the school committee and the district. We represent families of more than 13,000 students with disabilities across every neighborhood, grade span, disability category, language background, school type, from ages 3 to 22. Our charge is to advise on policy, programming, service delivery, and systems, identify systemic gaps and equity barriers, and elevate the lived experiences of students and families. We collaborate in good faith, we show up prepared, and we maintain independence driven by our bylaws, because families need a voice that is honest, data-driven, and grounded in student outcomes. We're not guests in the process, but required partners in ensuring every student with a disability in BPS receives the free and appropriate public education they are entitled to under law. Tonight, we fulfill that responsibility to present the status, the data provided by the district itself through the lens of families, caregivers, and students who live those numbers every day. And a line we return to often is this: collaboration does not mean silence. Next. So what is working? We want to name what is working, and this slide captures it well. SPEDPAC board members and school-based reps across the city are doing real leadership work, convening families, translating policy into plain native language, and partnering with district teams. This photo on the slide reflects that collaboration. We were proud to welcome Superintendent Skipper, Chair Robinson, and now Vice Chair Skerritt, district leaders, BTU members, and families at our recent Family Resource Fair.
Chair
And this
Bazil,
was not,
Chair Bazil, hold on one second. I think the presentation came off. Just give us 1 second.
We can see it.
Oh, you can?
I
Yeah.
can see it fine. I can see it
Martin,
fine.
see it.
Okay, I
That's fine.
can't. Okay. All
I
right.
can
Sorry.
see it. Well, sorry about that.
No.
And this was not just a meet and greet. We had 30 community vendors on site sharing real-time resources with families, everything from immediate access to educational supports, community services, and tangible things they walked away with. Parents left with information they could actually use the next day, not just brochures to put in a drawer. It was a great time had by all and proof that when we come together with shared purpose, good things happen. These spaces matter. They build trust, transparency, and real relationships. And this matters just as much. There is still significant work to do. Families should never learn about school closures through the media. This is not partnership. That is not transparency. And it undermines trust at the exact moment families need stability. If decisions affect students, families and students must be part of the conversation before decisions are made, not after. Next. This slide is where the conversation gets real. School closures are not neutral operational decisions. They are equity decisions. And for students with disabilities, they are especially life-altering decisions. Cash, ACC, Henderson 9 through 12, and Lee Academy serve high concentrations of students with disabilities, many of whom are Black, Latino, and multilingual learners. Many have already experienced the greatest instability in our system. And here is the central problem we must name plainly. BPS is using a problem to create it created as a justification to close schools instead of fixing the system that created the problem. Cash and ACC already serve many multilingual learners. Binka, a school for multilingual learners, is moving into the Cash building. What we propose as families is that Cash is a building large enough to accommodate all three school communities, keep students in their cherished and familiar neighborhoods, and stabilize learning environments rather than fracture them. This is not hypothetical. It is feasible, practical, and educationally sound. With intentional planning, Cash could become a hub of excellence, integrating multilingual education, special education, and inclusive practice under one roof, filling seats, maximizing impact, and strengthening outcomes for all students. This is what innovation looks like, not disruption, not displacement, not dismantling. And as a wise carpenter once said, measure twice, cut once. What we are seeing instead is the opposite. There is no clear plan for inclusive practices, facilities use, or long-term program alignment. A real plan would include a strategy, a timeline, and a budget. All three are missing. And worse, there are numerous examples of the district moving in the opposite direction. Instead of expanding effective inclusion models, the district is closing them. Henderson 9 through 12, a nationally recognized inclusive high school, is being dismantled. A successful school, not a failing school, an exemplar. Mary Lyon was closed before it. These schools were proof points that inclusive education can work when it is resourced and protected. So let's be honest about the pattern this signals. BPS is closing schools that work while claiming it cannot fix the inequities that the district itself created. Families offered solutions. We asked for meetings. We asked for dialogue before decisions were made. We were received instead with silence initially, followed by decisions, and families learning about closures through the media. And it is not consistent. This is not consistent with the district's racial equity planning tool, which is designed precisely to prevent this kind of harm. The tool requires decisions to be slowed down, impacts analyzed, and families engaged before outcomes are finalized, not after. SPEDPAC asks for two very clear things. First, a real plan, one that includes a strategy, a timeline, and a budget. for inclusion, facilities, and student stability. Second, stop dismantling school communities without such plan. Because disruption is not a strategy. Displacement is not innovation. Equity cannot be achieved by breaking apart the very communities that students depend on to thrive. That is the work in front of us, and it is urgent. Next. Boston Public Schools has an inclusion plan with strong language, compelling values, and citations to research. What it does not yet have is a coherent operating structure system for inclusion. A plan without implementation guidance, progress monitoring, and corrective mechanisms is not a roadmap. It is a rhetoric-rich statement that lacks the teeth of implementation. Inclusion is not a placement decision. It is a district-wide instructional staffing and accountability strategy. And the data tells us that inclusion in BPS is currently inconsistent, fragile, and highly dependent on where a student happens to be enrolled. Let's start where inclusion either succeeds or fails first. Literacy. Equitable literacy has been a decades-long failure in Boston Public Schools. This is not a moral judgment. It is an outcome reflected clearly in data. MCAS ELA results show that students with disabilities have not recovered to pre-pandemic levels across elementary, middle, or high school. Recovery efforts have not reached the students who need them most. This is not because students cannot learn. Research is unequivocal. With strong Tier 1 core instruction grounded in the science of reading, explicit phonemic awareness, decoding, and systemic phonics, at least 80% of students should succeed in Core 1 instruction, and up to 95% of students can learn to read on grade level by first grade when instruction is explicit, cumulative, and supported by early intervention, including students with significant cognitive impairments. So the question is not, can students learn? The question is why our system continues to fail to teach them early and well. What BPS continually and currently operates is not a prevention model. It is a wait to fail model. Students struggle in weak Tier 1 instruction. They fall behind, and then they are referred for intervention or special education, not because they have disabilities, but because the system failed to deliver effective core instruction early. That is how inequity becomes embedded. That is how special education becomes a workaround for systemic instructional failure. High quality materials, HQM, are a starting point, not a solution. Right now, BPS measures progress by how many schools have high quality materials. This is an input metric. Materials do not teach students. Teachers do. Without sustained professional learning, mentoring, and job-embedded coaching, even the best materials fail to translate into outcomes. Focusing on possession rather than impact caps ambition and limits accountability. The problem was compounded when BPS dismantled its central literacy and content departments, weakening coherence, expertise, and district-wide instructional alignment. Fragmentation is the enemy of equity. A coherent inclusion plan requires a strong Tier 1 core that reaches and accelerates at least 80% of students. A robust MTSS framework, which Tracy talked about, for the remaining 20% with clear progress monitoring and a cadre of certified reading specialists deployed strategically across the grade span, focused on early intervention and early intervening services, not remediation after years of failure. Reading specialists must function as part of a system-wide architecture aligned to core instruction and integrated into coaching and classroom practice. This is where budget and staffing decisions become equity decisions. The district is facing a $53 million shortfall. BPS must prioritize student-facing and teacher-supporting roles, reading specialists, interventionists, therapists, and coaches, and critically examine central office structures that do not engage students or families or produce measurable outcomes. Right now, the district operates a two-track system steeped in scarcity. Some schools are resourced to succeed, others are asked to compensate for systemic gaps. Inclusion cannot thrive under those conditions. An inclusion plan without evidence-based instruction, aligned professional learning, adequate staffing, and accountability for outcomes is not an inclusion plan. It is a promise without a delivery system. And this is why decisions about schools like the Henderson matter so deeply. The Henderson is not simply a school or a configuration. It represents decades of disciplined work grounded in research, evidence-based practice, and thoughtful innovation. Work that produced real results for students with disabilities and lasting impact on families and educators. For those who experienced it, the Henderson was an oasis of educational excellence, a place where inclusion was not aspirational, but operational. Dismantling part of this institutional history of success is not neutral. It erases knowledge, it disrupts proven practice, and it sets the district back at the very moment when we should be scaling that work, not dismantling it. Policy without movement is not progress, and inclusion without infrastructure is not equity. Next slide. When we look at outcomes, especially literacy, disparities become impossible to ignore. Students with disabilities show persistently the lowest reading outcomes across the district. This is not about student ability. Research is unequivocal. What varies is access to certified reading specialists, access to structured literacy interventions, access to consistent district-wide MTSS frameworks. Next slide. Transportation is not a side issue. It is a gatekeeper to education. When students arrive late, miss rides, or experience inconsistent transportation, they lose instructional time, and students with disabilities bear the greatest burden. We requested outcome-based transportation data. What we received focused on compliance and training descriptions. Families are telling us something different. Reliability, safety, and communication remain unresolved. Here is the bottom line. If a student cannot get to school safely and on time, access to education is already compromised. Transportation must be evaluated by outcomes, not assurances. Last slide. Evidence-based recommendations. What must happen now? The path forward is not abstract. The research is clear. The solutions are doable, scalable, and within district control. First, build a district-wide MTSS infrastructure with fidelity. Tier 1 instruction must reach at least 80% of students. Universal screening, progress monitoring, and clear decision rules must be non-negotiable. Second, guarantee access to evidence-based literacy intervention in every school. Deploy certified reading specialists and structured literacy interventions strategically. Measure success by student learning, not material adoption. Third, standardize inclusion quality, not just placement. Define non-negotiable components of high-quality inclusion and intervene when data shows students are not making progress. Fourth, redesign autism program using evidence-based models and family partnership. It's great that there's an autism audit that the district is conducting independently, but the audit must result in concrete program models, staffing expectations, fidelity monitoring, and shared accountability with families. Fifth, stabilize schools serving high-need students instead of closing them. Research shows closures harm students with disabilities. Equity requires investment, not displacement. Finally, institutionalize family partnership and systems. As a system function, families are not an afterthought. They are essential partners in design, implementation, and accountability. Students with disabilities are entitled to high-quality programming, meaningful inclusion, and outcomes that reflect their potential. This is not aspirational, it's a civil right. SPEDPAC stands ready to work with the district to develop a coherent system that reliably delivers outcomes for students with disabilities, regardless of school, neighborhood, race, language, or zip code. Thank you so much for giving me the space to share my full message tonight, uninterrupted, no countdown clock flashing, or no wrap-up signals from the side. I'm looking forward to answering questions and walking through the district data that we received together. Thank you.
Thank you both, Chief Seal and Ms. Bazile. I'll now open it up to committee for questions and comments. Ms. Polanco Garcia. Ms. Bazile, your camera is off. We've lost your picture, so you wanted to turn that back on. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah.
I don't have video. Did someone turn my video off? I don't know what happened. I apologize. I'm trying to get it back and I don't see it.
Okay, your video is on and we're not sure where you are, but it is.
I'm here. I promise you
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
here.
we can hear you.
I promise I'm here. Sorry about that. I don't know. It's a technical problem, I suppose. But I am here.
All right, thank you. Ms. Polanco Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Ms. Bazile, for your comment, for your advocacy. Estudiando un poco el papel que desempeña SPEDPAC y teniendo en cuenta quiénes integran este grupo.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bazile, for your advocacy. And I was trying to study a little bit SPEDPAC and trying to understand who are the members of this particular group.
So thank you for that question.
No, o sea, no es una pregunta, sino que yo entiendo quiénes integran este grupo, que son los padres, representantes de estudiantes con altas necesidades especiales que tienen una valoración directa de los programas que tiene Boston Public School.
It is my understanding that it is the parents that have a direct opinion on this, the particular programs that Boston Public Schools have. It is the parents supervising the process as well.
Eso significa que los primeros que tienen una evaluación directa de los programas que le presenta BPS a los estudiantes con necesidades especiales son precisamente los padres que reciben estos programas para sus niños.
So we can say also that the parents are the first recipients of this particular programs that are the special need population is getting. The parents should be or are the first recipients of this particular programs directed to this particular population of special needs.
Y personalmente conozco algunos miembros que integran este grupo y siempre tienen la misma preocupación.
I have to say that I do know a couple of members of this particular group, the SPEDPAC that is, and they always have the same concern or concerns.
Y muchas veces este grupo está diciendo, el distrito no nos escucha, nosotros somos parte, somos un organismo asesor, somos quienes llevamos algunas sugerencias y estamos viendo que el distrito no nos escucha, algunos programas no están funcionando.
So what is commonly heard from these parents, they say, we are somehow an advisory board, an advisory group right here, an advisory body. We are formulating different suggestions and advice, and the district is not hearing to what we're saying. Sometimes the programs are not working as they're supposed to sometimes.
Y he hablado con la señora Kay en otras ocasiones, me he reunido con ella y he escuchado su visión y sé que ha planteado algunas, ella manifestó que sí que hay desafíos, que en la evaluación que se hizo, 10 de 16, etcétera, etcétera. Pero mi pregunta va, ¿qué necesita? Y no sé, seguro puede ser Miss Kay o Brasil para responder esa pregunta. ¿Cómo podemos lograr una conexión más directa y colaborativa de este grupo tan importante con el distrito?
So my question becomes, how can we foster a better, a deeper type of connection and collaboration with this particular group and with the district? I had the opportunity to hear what I had spoken with Ms. Kay, heard about her vision and the challenges, particularly regarding that evaluation, the 10 out of 16. So how can we better collaborate with this particular group to better understand their needs in this case?
I am so excited by this question. And again, I apologize for my video because I have reached out and I would love to have our board members. First of all, let me just say that every parent in Boston Public Schools who has a child with a disability is a SPEDPAC member. We have SPEDPAC reps in each and every school in the same way that you have CPC members. They are elected, they are part of our executive board. We are an advisory group to the school committee, and I have done outreach hoping that the school committee would come to our meetings, see what we do. We have a general meeting tomorrow. Dr. Kevin Simon will be there talking about therapeutic supports that are available in the city of Boston and within schools. One of the things that parents are concerned about, because our role as an advisory council to the school committee is to share the concerns that parents have, and that's what I just did, but also to present recommendations, solution-oriented approaches that would ameliorate these issues. When we look at across the district, what we know for sure, and I'm going to give you a couple of data points, if that's okay, Member Polanco Garcia. It's one of the biggest challenges across populations of Black, Latino, multilingual learners, students with autism. BPS data shows the same pattern. The identity of these students often predicts placement. And if we look at the data, and this is BPS data, where it predicts where the system produces the same outcomes year after year. For example, I'll give you a couple of points for different groups, if that's okay. Black students are 28% of the population. But if you look at specific disability categories, for example, intellectual impairment, of all the students who are enrolled in special education, Black students comprise 44%. So if you look at that's disproportionality. And if you also look at who is placed in concentrated restrictive settings, which we call substantially separate, which means that they are educated with students with disabilities and they are not in general education. If you look at substantially separate placements, for example, Black students comprise 42.3%. If you look at multilingual learners with disabilities, multilingual learners are not outside. They're not outside of special education. They are deeply inside of special education. So if you look at substantially separate settings for multilingual learners, they comprise 38.5% of those who are placed in restrictive settings. Latino students, for example. Latino students are disproportionately identified in specific categories such as communication impairment. So that raises the question, do we have bilingual, bicultural assessors? Do we have a cadre of bilingual teachers who are bilingual and bicultural who can assess these students and determine whether this is a language dominance issue or is it a disability? And so what we have for Latino students in terms of placement in substantially separate programs, 42.1%. If you look at, um, if you look at, okay, so if you look at, what my point is that Black multilingual learners, Latino students have the highest restrictive placement in substantially separate classrooms. And if you compare them to white students, only 8% of white students in BPS are in substantially separate programs. And so when we look at the district's inclusion model, we have to interrogate who is being provided opportunity and who is remaining in these substantially separate programs. The reason that that's important is we have to look at outcomes. We have to look at, who is disciplined. And, I don't know how much information you would like on that, but I do have the data on that. We know that Black, Latino, multilingual learners, and students with autism are disciplined at the highest rates when they are in substantially separate classrooms. And they are often in these classrooms and don't have an opportunity to move towards inclusion. So this is the work that has to be done in BPS. And so parents, obviously, who are at a school like the Henderson, that is what I call an oasis of excellence, and have the opportunity to not only be with typically developing peers, but get invited to birthday parties. They see their peers in the neighborhood, and they pick up social skills and other skills, because it's not just the teacher who imparts skill development for students. Their placement with peers is important so that they develop these social skills and make friends and that sort of thing.
I would just like to add, thank you, Member Polanco Garcia, for recognizing this very important question. I also want to add that, as I stated in my presentation, we are making significant impact in making sure that we're providing services to the whole child. When we look at our data for inclusion, we do see that for full inclusion, we have 31.9% of our students, our Black students, are in inclusion learning environments. We have 47.3% of our Latinx students that are in full inclusion, and 13.3% of our white students that are in full inclusion. And the same with our partial inclusion. We have, for our Black students, we have 30.7% of our Black students. But when we look at the numbers, we might look at the level of services. And when we look at our Latinx students, we have 55.6% of our Latinx students that are in partial inclusion classrooms. Although through the data that Ms. Brazil has shared, we do see that, and we saw that before, that there is a large number of our Black, Brown, and Latinx students that are in substantially separate. But our data for 2025 show that we're making impact, that through our initiatives, through our equitable literacy, the fact that we have over 2,000 educators in the city of Boston that are trained in specialized reading to address and to close the opportunity gap for our students who do have a reading disability is remarkable. So we are making shifts, we are making changes, we are working strategically to address the gaps that we talked about today. But we understand that there's still work that we need to do, and we're willing to do that, and we're committed to do that through the leadership of our superintendent, and also for our school leaders who are invested through their quality school improvement plan to address the areas that we're talking about today: equitable literacy, our outcomes for our students with disability, and for our multilingual learners. And in previous data that we saw from MCAS, we see that our L students are making significant progress in achievement as well as in growth in access testing.
I think I just want to add, if I may, very quickly, to give you a 35,000-foot view of what the challenge is. Boston Public Schools educates 22% of its population in special education. The national average is around 15 to 16%. And so if you look at that data, the question is raised, why are there so many Black and Brown students in special education, and what are we doing to directly interrogate the inconsistent access to evidence-based Tier 1 literacy, uneven early intervention, in particularly insufficient bilingual evaluation capacity for Latino students, but also for Black students, it matters because across multiple categories, the population of students in Boston Public Schools in special education is overwhelmingly male, meaning the burden lands heavily on Black boys, where Black students are already overrepresented in segregated settings. So it's not just identification, it's also where they are placed once they are identified. And these are the population of students who are in these placements. And yes, while those numbers are accurate, I just want to emphasize that those are composites. And so when we look at who is in these restrictive placements, we look at the percentile of students, and they fall around Black, Latino, multilingual learners, and the data and the outcomes are consistent with the lack of progress, which has not reached the pre-pandemic rates.
Dr. Alkins?
Sorry, Member Polanco Garcia, are you done with your questions? I don't want to.
Yeah.
So thank you both for your presentations, and I'm actually appreciative of seeing the collaborative structure that you all have up here, and I'm just wondering, have you all discussed any other modes of collaboration in terms of how you all are sharing data with each other, how you all are interpreting it, and the types of recommendations that are meant to come out of that? Are we foreseeing as a body, are we expecting to see a set of joint recommendations? Or are we expecting to see individual presentations from SPEDPAC, perhaps like annually? And I guess I'll lean more to Chair Bazile on this. What do you foresee as sort of your particular cadence with us as the school committee in terms of presentations or just updates? How do you sort of see that?
Well, my proposal to the superintendent and OSS was to have quarterly meetings with the school committee members to talk about the data. And we currently do have quarterly meetings with the superintendent. We just had one on January 12th. We meet with Chief Seal on a monthly basis and talk about what is bubbling up in terms of the concerns of families. And I think that this is really urgent. I'll give you one specific example of collaboration. Right now, there is an independent autism audit going on in the district. And we would love to be directly involved and have conversations with those individuals who are conducting the audit. Because students with autism, it reflects the clearest policy versus practice gap in autism placement. So for autism enrollment is racially concentrated. 38% of Latino students are identified with autism, 37.3% Black, and 13.4% white. But then when we look at the placement for students with autism from the district's own data, 59.1% of the students are in substantially separate placements, and 34.8 are in full inclusion, 1.9 are in partial inclusion, 0.6% are in public day, and 3.5 are out of district. And so one of the things that we hear from parents is when they go out of district, often students lose access to their community. They have to get up early. They have long bus rides, and they get home very late. What we would like to see the district do is replicate some of the programs that our students with autism go to that are out of district. The out of district budget right now for special education is over $40 million. So if you look at that budgetary item, the question is, what can Boston Public Schools do to replicate some of the successes and what is driving students with autism to go out of district? Because when a student goes out of district, it's not just the cost of tuition, but the transportation is usually a higher cost. And so as we look at budget constraints, how do we move towards excellence and ensure that we have in-district placements that are working for our students? That's where SPEDPAC families can partner with the district in terms of what needs to be in place, what kind of services, what is the frequency, how can we develop these programs effectively in partnership with families. So that is a hot topic right now in terms of collaborating with the district on the autism audit, and we would love to have the opportunity to be involved in that work and perhaps have a working group that addresses that audit. But most importantly, what comes out after the audit in terms of effective evidence-based approaches and programming for students with autism and more opportunities. I have to admit, my granddaughter has autism and she's out of district. I didn't want her to go out of district, but it was the district's recommendation. And that is not on Superintendent Skipper. It happened with the prior administration. Often there are restrictions. I'd love to have a longer conversation in terms of why are students going out of district when they really want to stay within the neighborhood and go to after-school programs with friends and parties and not get home so late. So thank you for that question.
I would just like to chime in if possible. I just want to address the comment about the audit. I do want to say that part of the audit included us to also be independent because it's an outside evaluator that's looking at the district in terms of making strategic recommendations. And our priority for the audit had to do with analysis of our data. We recognized that we had a high percentage of our autism students receiving ABA services. And we recognized the fact that as we listen to our educators, our evaluators, that we need to develop a continuum of neurodivergent services for our students who have an autism disability. So we have not yet received back the findings for that audit. Our parents were also involved in the audit. There was a questionnaire. There was also listening sessions for district parents as well to get feedback, constructive feedback that will help shape recommendations from our autism audit. And that's so important. In regards to your question around partnership, I think this is exactly a true testimony of the partnership that OSS has with SPEDPAC. We do meet monthly and talk about families, and we also have met also to look at the data that has been shared with you today. There's ongoing work that's needed. As a matter of fact, Edith and I had spoke recently about also having a conversation with ODA, joining one of our monthly meetings to unpack some of the data that we're talking about. But we also have to understand that we have to be mindful of FERPA and identifying information of our student data. So there's some metrics of data that we cannot share because of that requirement. We work in transparency and also on behalf of our students and families. And I also want to add about the relationship with our families. This new IEP has provided a new landscape for us to really work on making sure that our families are at the center of the table and understanding the implications of what does it mean for your child to have a disability. And that's part of the reason why we're having this intensive professional development by regions for every single member of our teams, because we want to make sure that we have high leverage practices, but we have consistency. We also want to look at the fact of our over-identification of Black, Brown, and Latinx students with disabilities. And that's part of our evaluation modules of trainings around assessments, and also using assessments that are not normed. And we cannot look at identification for students that are assessments that are not normed for students that have a second language. So we have various tools that our behavioral health department are using. Our speech and language services department has evaluators that speak a second language. And we're mindful in also looking at identifying and evaluating students in their native language as well. So there are practices that we're working on in strengthening our capacity to evaluate our multilingual learners, to make sure that we're not over-identifying them into more restrictive placements.
And I just want to add to that if you look at autism and BPS, it is a gendered equity issue because 77.9% of students with autism are male. So when Black and Latino students comprise the majority of students with autism, and autism is largely male, the lived impact falls heavily on Black and Latino boys. And so there's nearly 6 in 10 students with autism who are placed in substantially separate settings. So inclusion cannot be treated as guidance. It must be built in the system capacity and measured by outcomes. And so we know that that can be done. And we did ask for specific data. We got some data in terms of placement and identification, but the multiple approaches that are used for students with autism and other very specific questions that we had were not provided. And that's a conversation that I've had with Chief Seal in working with ODA and really getting transparent information, because we don't want to go by what we think. Yes, parents have lived experiences, but we want to see specifically where the trends are, where the patterns are. We know where the patterns are in terms of identification, who is in this category, where they are placed in mostly restrictive settings, and outcomes are poor. But we want to go beyond that and move towards what are the solutions? What can we do in order to integrate more effective methodologies and treatment approaches and instructional methods for students with autism? And then I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we often have students whom we call twice exceptional. So a student may have a disability, but they also may be gifted and talented. And autism is a perfect category to talk about that, because many students, because of their sensory issues or their self-regulation issues, if they don't have the correct intervention, and right now what's used in the district is ABA primarily, and we wanted to know what other methods are being used. That's something that parents have asked about. Without having these therapies for students with autism, they may not be able to express their gifts and talents. And so I'll give you an example. I'm former teacher in the district. I had a student who, with autism, who loved dinosaurs. And, with MCAS, you have to show your work back in the day. And this student wouldn't show his work. So I said, what would Tyrannosaurus Rex do to show his work in this problem? And the student was prompted to demonstrate showing your work. So there are methodologies, there are approaches to help students and to unveil their innate gifts and talents that they may not otherwise show without really having clear methodologies and approaches that target the areas where they struggle.
Thank you, Edith. I just want to quickly say that we recognize that autism is a disability category that is a national crisis. We know that 1 out of 31 students or children are diagnosed with autism. So this is something that is a national crisis that we are also looking at very clearly. And that is part of the reason why we did move forward with this independent audit, to really give us some advice and also some processes in place that we need to address, given the number of percentage of our students that we do have with an autism disability, which is aligned with the national average, but also with, as Edith did share, that we recognize that ABA is not the only level of services that we will be providing in BPS, and we're moving forward to look at other options as well.
Thank you both, and I think and perhaps on a separate in a separate conversation, I'd really love to hear Chief Seal specifically as you all are going through, and I really appreciate the work of reevaluating the IEP process and really looking at that, and just very curious on sort of the mechanisms of cultural responsiveness that you're integrating into that, and how it's manifesting. I mean, not just across racial lines, but we just heard, of course, it is diagnosed more in males. However, we do know that the manifestations in young girls it's very different. And so I'm very curious as to how you are including the cultural responsiveness in that sense as well. And that can be for a later conversation, separate conversation. But thank you both.
I can say something about that quickly if it's okay. So as chair of SPEDPAC, I also serve on the special ed advisory panel with the state. And we had that conversation just the other day around ensuring that the new IEP has a culturally responsive piece. We are making clear, unambiguous recommendations as a panel to DESE because that language currently does not exist. We know that students around cultures have funds of knowledge, ways of knowing, bodies of information that are not reflected in the curriculum. And how do we focus on what the student brings to the table that is culturally different and allow that student to express themselves in that way? Quick example, a student whose family is here and doesn't speak English and has a vending business. There has been research where these students are doing mathematical calculations by doing all the banking, making transactions, keeping books. How do we take that lived experience and translate that into our math curriculum and acknowledge that students' gift and ability in communication, negotiating, keeping records, doing mathematical work. So that cultural piece is something that we discuss at the state level that needs to be injected in the IEP so that we're acknowledging all of the students' gifts, talents, and abilities and not just looking at the disability. Because the only pathway to strengthening the students' skills and knowledge is to build on their schema, their background knowledge, what they know well, and create a bridge to what we want them to express in a way that models their competence. And so that's a teaching strategy. That's a pedagogy that needs to be aligned with content.
Thank you, Edith. I just want to quickly just elaborate. Edith had mentioned earlier about the national average of 15%. I just need to make sure that we also understand that our Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has over-identified as well the number of students with disabilities, because in Massachusetts, there's a 19% of students with disabilities. That is the average in Massachusetts. So when we look at where we are as an urban district in comparison to other urban districts, I'm not saying that that is justifiable, but that's also something that we must also think about. The other thing I want to also recognize is that we have, when we look at also the state average, we have the lowest percentage of students with autism disability that are placed in out of district. So we have built the capacity to service our students in BPS as opposed to moving our students with significant disabilities to an out of district placement. So that's something that I think that we need to recognize. And also we do recognize the fact of the importance of having program evaluations for certain disability categories as well.
Right, and we retain them, but the outcomes are very poor. And the data is very clear on that it needs to be improved. The ability to teach literacy and to ensure students have access to the curriculum and can demonstrate outcomes is a huge body of urgent work that needs to be accomplished.
Thank you. Mr. Peralta?
Thank you so much, Chair Robinson, and I would like to thank Chief Seal for your presentation, and especially Chair Basile for your presentation and for your many years of advocacy and for pushing hard for the district to become better every day and serving our students. My question to Chair Basile, without any intention of victimizing our wonderful different ability students, but it has been said that a society, the level of humanity of a society can be measured by the way it treats his most vulnerable members. And that could be said of a school district too. Um, given the fact that unfortunately we are going to be facing tough years regarding the budget for the district for the many reasons we have heard, I would like to know what would you say are the highest priority in terms of funding this work of supporting our students with multiple abilities?
I
Thank you.
think that is a phenomenal question, and it really starts with understanding from the context of the students who they are as a learner. And so if you look at, we often respond to environmental conditions such as poverty, homelessness. We know that students who are in the custody of DYS living in group homes have a higher risk of being placed in some of these special education programs that do not work for them. We know that they are subject to higher suspensions, and I'm talking across the board. And I have the data around Black, Latino, multilingual learners who have disabilities. So yes, you're right that these students are highly vulnerable and dependent on districts as a life raft and an opportunity to create a pathway for their learning. We have to stop and pause. And when I talk about using the racial equity tool it really is a tool that's used in partnership with community to say, what skills, strengths, and talents does the student possess? And we have to believe and uncover that they exist. And so it really has to do with discarding the deficit mindset of this student, because we create this learned helplessness, is incapable of learning. We have to embrace that first. And we have to pause and not focus on intent, but impact. The impact of what we create as systems is not working in BPS for our students. That is clear by the data. The data shows that. And so it really has to do with how do we create programming and services that work. First of all, they have to be evidence-based, not just research. Research is out there. Some of the research is junk. But when I talk about evidence-based research, it means that if we do this, we will have this outcome every time, and it will be replicable. So we heard from Principal Tracy. We heard about systems. We heard about structures. We heard about assessment. We heard about teamwork. We heard about multiple methods and pathways to ensure that we are creating an arc, a bridge of success for students. And that is what is required under special ed individually. And so it really is impactful work. It's listening to teachers who know these students best. It's really creating a plan. So when I was in the district and, Superintendent Skipper was there also, when the initial inclusion model was designed with Bill Henderson at the O'Hearn, what we did is we, first of all, gave teachers space, professional learning, mentoring, time to plan. How are we supporting our teachers around professional learning? What tools are we giving them? If you have one tool, if you think, if you have a hammer, you think everything is a nail. So how are we diversifying support based upon direct evidence-based research of what works? And it is a process where collaborative planning, building a professional learning community is critical. And that takes time. I've sat with the teams at Henderson back in the day when I was in the district, and at the Manning, where they had sub-separate classrooms for Black students, Black males, for emotional impairment, where they were totally segregated. And so it really is, how is the district supporting student-facing work? And I always say that because it has to do with, is what you're doing supporting teachers in the classroom, school leaders who are struggling, and who don't have equitable resources, and is it student-facing? And are you data-driven? So it really has to do with creating an intentional process a structure and in fact an infrastructure where you know that when a student struggle, you can identify not one tool, but the right tool. And maybe you don't have it and you can create it, but you have to create it as a team. So how are teachers collaborating? What space are we giving them to collaborate and to create pathways for students? Our inclusion models, when they were constructed, were teacher driven. The principle was important, but it was a model that regardless of who was the leader, the teachers were the ones who created the model. And if a new teacher came on board, they went to lunch, they met, they had this professional learning community. And that is what is needed, and that is what happened. It's intentional and deep work. It is not just looking at data. It's having conversations. It's recording. It's looking at student work. It is a process of continual improvement and conversations. It's taking one teacher and saying, oh, well, you know, this teacher over here is excellent with students with autism. I'm going to find I'm going to get you a substitute teacher so you can go to that classroom and spend the day and see what that teacher is doing. It's building capacity. And then you release that teacher who is a master teacher to go with a new teacher and partner with them and do co-teaching. So it really has to do with how do we get a school like the Elliott, which is somewhat of a unicorn, right? Because these, you know, and say, what are the practices that we can take that we can apply to other school communities and scale them? And what is the one thing we can do that is going to make a big difference? And how do we support teachers where they are? And so the original model had to do with all of those components. And so Boston Public Schools has done this work successfully, highly successfully. And I have to be honest and say that I see that this is a period of unraveling. And so we have to really get back to being student-centered, focused on outcomes, looking at student work, driven by data, progress monitoring, all of that counts. And again, I apologize for my video. I have no idea what's happening with it.
I would just like to add quickly, I want to acknowledge your question, Member Peralta, and that's such a critical question when we talk about our whole child and our whole student. I also want to acknowledge the fact that in the spring, you will hear more details from Dr. Rose around the intensive work that we're doing around our opportunity and achievement gap policy, and also looking at the work that we're doing around the REPT, and also the work that we're doing in terms of culturally linguistic practices across the district. I also want to acknowledge the fact that several of our schools have done exceptionally well in meeting the needs of our students, not just students with disabilities, but all of our students. We see that in our data through our walkthrough tools. We see that through our visits into our PLCs. We see it through our schools' quality, schools improvement plans. Our school leaders are vested in improving outcomes for all of our students, and we're working strategically to close that opportunity gap. There is progress that we are making, and we recognize the progress. We also understand that we've done strategic training through our emergent literacy professional development for educators. We've launched over 281 educators across 59 public schools to really focus on literacy. So there are lots of instrumental things that we're doing across the district to close that opportunity gap for our students in literacy. When we look at the QSP, we know that our students, the first priority the schools are looking at is making sure that our students feel a sense of belonging. Our school leaders are taking that seriously because in order for our students to be engaged in their learning, they must feel welcome. And it's not just the Elliott that's rocking it. We have so many other schools in this district. And if you ever have the opportunity to be part of one of our walkthroughs or attend one of our PLCs, you will see data. You will see outcome data. You'll see areas of growth. You'll see areas that we need to focus on. But you'll see our students learning and our students doing well. And our school leaders are rocking it across the district and making sure that they're taking their commitment to educate our students very seriously. So I welcome you the opportunity to visit, be part of one of our PLCs, attend some of our walkthroughs, so that you can get a firsthand understanding of what's happening in our classrooms with our schools, with our students.
One of the things that I want to add, which I think is really important, is that when we first built these inclusion models in BPS, we did a survey of readiness. And so a school, we may have raised their hand and said, I want to be an inclusion school. We went in as a team, not just special ed, but also content departments and behavior specialists, itinerants, and we assessed their readiness, not just in terms of their student population, but the environmental spaces. And some were ready and some were not. And we helped them to get ready. And we were transparent about what needed to be in place, technology, spaces set up for sensory rooms, all kinds of things. And so that's where intentionality comes in. And we always focus on failure as a district. We pay attention to schools who are failing and we say get better, but we don't show them how. And so what we did is we partnered schools, one school that may be sort of along the way partnered with a school that was stronger, not a school that was exceptional, but a school where the progress was achievable. And so partnering schools. So you take a school like the Elliott, for example, exceptional. What can we do? What are the lessons learned here that can be scaled? And what are other schools that may not be at that status, but are accelerating in other ways, doing good work? We in Boston, there are robust inclusion opportunities, whether they're isolated classrooms. I'm not sure about whole schools, but there is robust opportunities of inclusive practices in BPS. Islands of excellence is what I like to call them. How do we replicate them? We often focus on the schools that are failing, but what does BPS do in guidance in saying these students with autism in this placement are doing very well? And sometimes it's traveling outside of the district to say, yes, we have similar students from urban contexts, and we need to bring those examples back and implement them, but understand what they are doing in their pathway to success. So this is a lot of work. This is deep work, and it's teamwork. It's not just doing, I know that we, back in the day, did walkthroughs, but the research on walkthroughs are not supportive of improvement. It's just it's a different model and a different time. So I think that yes, how do we acknowledge islands of excellence, support those schools to sustain their growth, and then replicate that across the district?
I would also add, Edith, I think it's important for us to represent that teachers learn by other teachers. And that's part of the work of our walkthroughs, is educators learning from educators in direct instruction and looking at what's happening in the classrooms. I also want to add that as we partner, we also have a partnership with DESE, because I know some of the questions were around substantially separate. And this is a new initiative. DESE has a network for substantially separate programs network. That is the program network that we're working on for this year. And it's really focusing and reframing substantially separate programs, looking at flexible instructional strategies. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of how do we develop pathways to better understand and to help our student experience and identify what key initiatives are necessary within our schools. I want to say that we can't keep thinking about the past, because we have to move forward for the future. And in your experiences that you shared, I really appreciate, Edith. But I think as we look at what we're doing in our current state, and as we build the capacity of our educators, as well as we look at the infrastructure of our schools, that we are positioning our students for success by being very strategic in what we're doing, as well as looking at the data and making informed decisions, as well as using evidence-based practices. We have investments with Mass General, with Linda Mubel, with Wilson. As I said before, we have over 2,000 educators that are trained in evidence-based practices to close the opportunity gap in reading and literacy. And that's something for an urban district. That's a huge, huge win for us. And we're working on leveraging those resources to really make sure that we're providing targeted intervention. When we look at the implementation of our multi-systems of support, and I talked to the Division of Academics and Teaching and Learning, Recently, I found out that almost over 75% of our students with disabilities are getting Tier 1 interventions. So in addition to what they're getting for their IEP services, they're also getting Tier 1 interventions. And some of our students with disabilities are also getting Tier 2 and Tier 3. So we're being very strategic in terms of what we're providing for students with disabilities beyond the IEP, but also looking at that alignment of tiered interventions, especially in the area of reading and math. And that's something that's happening very successfully within our schools.
And I'd love to just add that institutional knowledge and history of success is really important regarding lessons learned, and that's where the replicable success occurs from evidence-based practices, and it's there, and we have to pay attention to that and sustain that. There are new buckets of knowledge, yes, absolutely, but lessons learned from the past successes is important, and it's not useless information. It is critical information. And just to reiterate to you, Member Alkins, I would love for SPEDPAC to have more conversations and or presentations with the school committee on these areas, because I believe that the partnership with the district as well as with this body should and could be strengthened around parents having conversations around what works, because I always say that parents are our experts. You have students 6 hours a day, parents have them 18 hours plus the weekend. And so having that collaborative conversation is really important. And I just want to reiterate, parents as knowledgeable partners, as equal partners, as deciders in decision makings, and providing the input is critical. We have a great council. We have leaders. I will name one school who gave feedback, and they're doing surveys. I had one school that did a survey of what the parents' concerns were, which was integrated in this presentation with pie charts. Our SPEDPAC leaders are doing an amazing job, and we take their input seriously. We represent the families of 13,000 students with disabilities, and I'm not here for myself. I'm here representing them, and this is their voice. And I would love to come back and bring some SPEDPAC leaders with me to have this collaborative conversation with the school committee. So thank you for making that inquiry.
Yeah. Ms. Torres?
Yes, I wanted to thank Chair Theo and Chair Brazil for all this wonderful information. And also, I like one of the things that really caught my attention was the IEPs and how you want to train the families to be part of that bigger picture. As we talk about the Elliott, yes, there are many other schools that have like good stuff in place that we don't see because we don't go and we don't know. But I've seen a lot of other schools that the community is very important and the families are very important, because the family is the key to everything. And also, you also talked about having like students be advocates for themselves.
Yes.
I had one student at the school where I was that she wanted to be part of her IEP because she wanted to advocate for herself because she was leaving the school. They wanted to take some of her needs that she had in place for reading and writing away, and she decided that they couldn't do that because she was going to need that now that probably she was going to a place that nobody knew her, and she will need those resources and for somebody to be able to help her, and so she can be successful. So I think including the families and the parents is an excellent idea. And if I can come and watch when parents are trained, because I don't know how these trainings are. So my question is, who will be training the parents to be part of the bigger conversations? Who will be?
We do that once a month, and I did send Chair Robinson an invitation to our general meeting, which we have once a month, which is tomorrow, and all are welcome. I don't know if that was shared with you, but absolutely. We are an open book. We are eager to collaborate with the school committee. By the way, students are an integral part of the IEP process. One of the first questions is, what are the parent and student concerns? And we hear from students as young as possible, but they're required to participate and get their separate invitation when they turn 14. And it's because this process has to be driven by student needs. We want our students to know and to talk about and alert us to what accommodations and specialized instructional strategies work for them and what does not work. And that's where student voice is really important. Students need to know about their learning profile, what their metacognitive process is, and their ability to get into that, what we call zone of proximal learning, where they have an aha moment in science or math or history, so that they understand what they need and can advocate for that within the classroom. And so student advocacy, even in kindergarten, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you love? What color, what is your favorite color? We need to really empower students about who they are so that they can advocate for what they need. So thank you for that question.
I agree, Member Torres. That is an awesome question. And I want to also add everything that Edith said is very authentic and also a reality. I want to add that this is also happening at our IEP process, right? Especially if you're a new parent and you're finding out that your child has a disability. I also want to add, in part of my presentation, I talked about student-centered IEPs, individualized educational plans. That's where it happens also, right? At our schools, through the team process, our coordinators of special education, our assistant directors of special education works closely with our families, especially for a family who now is finding out that their child has a disability. But most importantly, that's why the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed changed the IEPs. They changed the IEPs because they wanted to make that connection between the student-centered learning, the student profile, the student vision. They also changed it because they wanted to make sure that parents can understand what they're reading and that it's meaningful. And there's also a section of that IEP that also talks about English language learners and making sure that they also have access to culturally responsive learning opportunities. So that IEP is the roadmap for our students with disabilities, and that's how we are also providing support. And part of our next level of work is really working more strategically with our families to do family sessions around the new IEP, especially for families who are now finding out that their child has a disability. We're seeing in our data that now that our youngest children, where our data before had them going into more restrictive placements, but because of all of our targeted interventions, we're seeing that our students, K0, K1, now have more inclusive pathways. So they're now in general education. So it's also important for us to work with our general education teachers to help them to understand how to provide those accommodations, how to differentiate instruction, because a special education IEP is targeted to a disability, and not all of our students have disabilities. Some of our students learn differently. We all learn differently, and we want to make sure that we provide the targeted training and supports to gen ed teachers as well as our special education teachers. But to answer your question, it does start with that student's individualized education plan. And we need to make sure that parents get the support that they need so that those plans are meaningful for their child, as well as teaching our students, especially our high school students, those self-advocacy skills.
And I just want to add that the presence of a disability does not trigger the need for special education. It may trigger the need for special education. It is a process of identification so that students are not unnecessarily labeled. You could have a disability and not require an IEP. You could have a disability as a student and require a 504 plan, which is general education. So that really goes back to the disproportionality in identification. And I just have to bring up one piece where the demographics and disability labeling show racialized segregation, and that's at Mel King Academy. I don't know how many school committee members have visited. I would encourage you to visit. And that's where we see the significant overrepresentation of Black students in particular, followed by Latino students. And we do have some multilingual learners at this site, although not very many. And the primary disability for this public day school, and the reason that it's a public day school is that all of the students who attend this school site have an IEP. So there are no general education students. This is a situation where SPEDPAC board members have been engaged in conversation around what is happening at these school sites. We have 3 public day schools. We have the Carter School for students with multiple disabilities, the Horace Mann for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. The largest population is Mel King Academy, where these students are labeled with emotional impairment. But I just want to point out that the attendance outcomes are the alarm bell that really that require, in terms of what's happening in special education, some attention. What we know for sure from the data is that when students are chronically absent, that is a data point that needs to be looked at, because chronic absenteeism leads to dropout, it leads to higher rates of suspension. The chronic absenteeism at this school, the Mel King Academy, formerly known as the McKinley, in 23-24 was 84.5%. It's currently 66.5%. This is not about student engagement. This is a system that is failing to create conditions for consistent attendance. And it's the most intensive population who require therapeutic services. We have appealed to the district to address the issues at Mel King Academy. SPEDPAC was involved in a working group a couple of years ago. Sadly, not much came out of that data. The instability and push factors have to do with disenrollment, students who just drop off the radar, the students who do not report, and the pattern reads like churn. These students don't have a stable therapeutic pathway, and we hear from the families and the students themselves, because many of these students are 18 or over, up to 22 years old. This is really a stark equity issue, and it's important for the district to address this, because that's where at the Mel King Academy we see data that is defined by racial concentration, near total emotional labeling, and extremely low attendance and extreme chronic absenteeism. So I would invite and ask for a conversation to address the issues for this high needs population, where they are not getting the supports that they need, where there are majority Black males, followed by Latino males in these schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just think I just want to respond really quickly. I'm sorry. I just think it's important for us to understand that DESE has not flagged Boston Public Schools for racial disproportionality. So although we do see some significant increase in percentages by ethnicity, we have not been flagged by DESE for disproportionality. There is language in terms of our improvement in terms of students placed in substantially separate, but not in the area of disproportionality.
And I have to mention at our panel meeting that we had, that was raised in terms of how do you acknowledge that there is racial disproportionality in a district that has a high population of Black and brown students. And what DESE admitted is that the metrics that they use do not lend to that calculus, as opposed to the lack of the existence of disproportionality. So when I spoke with Toby, I don't remember his last name, who works for DESE, he's actually the consultant, on this formula that is used, that needs to be recalculated, because Boston Public Schools certainly has it, but doesn't show it because of the metrics of how that formula is utilized within districts. So the formula is the problem, and we see that in data. We also see that I just have to give you one data point in BPS, where BPS in the data that was provided to SPEDPAC said 10%, there was a 10% reduction in suspensions, but the district redefine the definition of suspension so that in-school suspensions were not included. The reality is the data did not go down. The definition was recalculated and didn't count the in-school suspensions. So data notwithstanding needs to be interrogated in terms of what are the metrics that are used that may skew the data because of, in this case, the definition changed. So I would argue, and this is a conversation we've had repeatedly with the Special Ed Advisory Panel, that the disproportionality formula that is used needs to be recalculated, and that's a continuing and ongoing conversation with DESE.
So I just want to acknowledge and really express some appreciation for the collaboration between OSS and SPEDPAC, and I appreciate the thoroughness with which both Chief Seal and Chair Bazil want to make sure that every question is clarified. I think the fact that this has been such a wide-ranging conversation does speak to the importance of us having these venues, and I think you both have made those points very clear that there's a lot of ground to cover, that some of it are very far away from the questions that we've asked. And so as I ask my questions, I'm going to actually just direct them to Chair Brazil because I have not been on school committee yet where SPEDPAC has presented. So I just want to make sure to prioritize that. And I just have a couple because my colleagues have touched on so many already. But thank you so much for the presentation. And I just wanted to just double down on the appreciation for the Family Resource Fair in November. It was wonderful to see so many organizations come together and for families to take advantage of that. Chair Bazil, I was interested, I know that this presentation was also to speak to some of the goals of SPEDPAC itself, as well as the goals for the district's improvement. And I was interested in, are there specific goals that we as a school committee and also at the school level, school leaders, for example, could support around parent engagement in SPEDPAC? I know that you represent, the 13,000 families, but in terms of active participation in your monthly meetings or taking advantage of the resources that you offer, are 100% of the schools represented with representatives? Would love to know what your measures and targets are around that and how we can support.
I so appreciate that question, Member Scarrett, Vice Chair. Yes, so I think one of the first priorities is really solidifying our positive, proactive, collaborative partnership with the district and also with the school committee itself. Without really having that partnership, we cannot move towards addressing all of the issues that we discuss in terms of improving outcomes for students with disabilities. Our priority is to look and use the data to drive systemic change, and in some cases like the Mel King Academy restructuring, and to have a collaborative approach because we absolutely have a wealth of information to share. Yes, we need to solidify our membership in terms of one of the, and these, I know that these are kind of lowball, but they are working priorities that we have to ensure that we are in communication and contact with all SPEDPAC reps across the district. We have asked for the names of SPEDPAC reps because the direct involvement of parents, as much as and more that we hear from parents, we can get them involved. We have about maybe 50 out of the 110 schools identified, and that's a collaborative effort in doing outreach with Ana Tavares and her team. And
how does that compare to other years? Is that a typical
it's a struggle. It's a struggle. It has been a struggle. Honestly, it has been a struggle. And so even getting the data that we asked for has been a struggle. And I have reached out to Chair Robinson regarding that. I think that we cannot accomplish our goals unless the district is providing us with transparent data, because we don't want to say we think, we feel. We want to make sure that we understand the landscape, the current landscape.
No, I understand. I think, Chair Brazil, my question was about the data that you all have specifically around families participating in the monthly meetings and, you know, the representatives. So it sounds like you said you're at about 50% in terms of schools represented. And then do you all, how are you all feeling about, you know, engagement at those monthly meetings where families get that support with understanding IEPs, et cetera?
We want to improve that. And
Yeah.
I would say past years, the collaboration has been very strong. We would like to get to that. Our priority is to ensure, as I indicated, that all students with disabilities are provided with quality educational services and outcomes. And in
Yeah.
order to do that, the inclusion plan, for example, that is a huge priority. School closings is a huge priority.
Right.
We
And
we
yeah, and
struggled.
go
Sorry.
ahead. You go ahead.
We struggled with, I just have to be candid, our first quarterly superintendent meeting because we wanted to center parent voices and the districts resisted that. And, you know, we believe that, you know, parents are excited to have this conversation, even if they're difficult. This work cannot be done without our families, and our families need to be at the table. So, for example,
Yeah.
with the 4 school closings, we have to, it is not us speaking for parents. Our bylaws require that we invoke whatever methodologies, approaches are necessary to get parents' voices elevated to the leadership when decisions are being made. And in this case,
And I
the
think you've,
expert,
yeah, and I think that you know, this presentation too has really done a strong job of elevating those perspectives. And I know that there are meetings that SPEDPAC convenes for parents, and then there are meetings between BPS and SPEDPAC where there are representatives from SPEDPAC, and they're not open meetings, and there are different levels of those. But I appreciate your information about the current engagement, because I know that your role to advise on policy and programming and service delivery while elevating family and student perspectives. I was kind of focusing on that family and student perspectives piece in terms of whether you feel like you're getting enough of that representation from across schools. So thank you for that information. And I just had one other quick question, which was, you know, as you talk about some of the proof points and islands of excellence, and I'm absolutely with you in terms of, as you described, some of the practices at the Elliott that we should think about scaling and other places. I'm curious what specific student outcomes that SPEDPAC as an organization feels should be most prioritized when determining that a model is successful. I know that Chief Seal shared like that, you know, the district made progress in 10 out of 16 indicators from DESE. Just interested if any of those specific metrics resonate more than others, what's contributing to the definition of excellence as, you know, as SPEDPAC is identifying classrooms and instruction types that are strong. What are the student outcomes that feel are most reflected as, you know, evidence of success?
I would land on literacy, because literacy is learning and access to literacy and developing a student who can access meaning directly from printed text is the most impactful skill for learning, because literacy opens up the entire world. And because we know, like I cited the research, that 95% of students, regardless of cognitive impairments or intellectual impairments, based on the research and evidence, can read on grade level by first grade. How are we using universal evidence-based screening tools? And then when we determine students need intervention, how are we providing that intervention? Regardless of who the student is, a student being able to interact with text, drawing meaning, making decisions, solving problems, predicting, analyzing, critiquing, all of that is critical. That is how you function successfully in schools. Without a base of literacy and the ability to communicate ideas and to dream and imagine, you know, and explore the world, that is a piece that BPS and equitable literacy, I believe, needs to be interrogated. The focused curriculum has not worked for our young learners. And
So when you all are sorry, I'm so sorry, Chief Brazil. When you all are looking across schools, and so that literacy goal, are you looking at ultimate like literacy proficiency rates? Are you most drawn to like student growth rates? I know you mentioned that the walkthrough data is not particularly resonant for you. So just interested in terms of defining a school in trouble versus a school that's doing well. Is it the proficiency or just the direction of improvement?
Well, I think both are important. We want students to reach proficiency, but when we look at the data around, how do you teach a student with a disability to learn, or why are there so many students in special ed? Literacy is the one piece that bubbles up. And so it really is about how do we develop early literacy with students, and how do we take them from that phonemic and phonological awareness stage to actually writing, which is the end product, that I can read a text, but MCAS requires, I know it's not a graduation requirement, but it requires students to demonstrate their proficiency through writing, because that's the end goal, right? I can take a text and I can develop meaning and answer questions, make inferences and all of that. That's the comprehension. So it really is, schooling is about developing literacy, math literacy. It's just not just narrative, it's expository text too. And so once students are able to access literacy, then they can level up. And we don't know what their potential is. Perhaps they can go into an accelerated learning, but if they struggle with literacy, which is it is the benchmark for success in school. It is what students need. Even if they are using technology to augment, they may need interventionists. And we don't have reading specialists in every school. We know from the research that 1 out of 5 students, 20% of the population, will struggle with literacy at some point. And so if we're not preparing a cadre of educators, and the COVID funds, ESSER funds, was a perfect opportunity to rescale and think about how we can infuse that support delivered to these students early intervening services. Then what happens when the student is unable to read? Frustration kicks in. There may be behaviors. For boys, we know that peaks into, oh, he's a problem, let's get him out, often referred to special ed. So if you look at why do we have so many students educated in special ed?
And I understand. And so I appreciate that emphasis on literacy. And it does, again, feel very aligned to the district's focus. And it seems like there's a good opportunity for that to be a place of synergy for SPEDPAC and the district to collaborate on best practices there. So I appreciate that. And the combination of proficiency and growth as the ways to evaluate success, I think, is something that as a school committee, we are also very drawn to in terms of really identifying successful schools by outcomes and direction of growth, as well as anecdotal data, but also those concrete metrics. So thank you very much, Chair Brazil. I'll turn it over to the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank both Chief Seal and Ms. Brazil for this conversation this evening. I think we've learned a lot about what's going on in special education, and recognizing and understanding all the hard work that the district has been doing over this past several years as we've tried to become more inclusive across the board, and understanding also what's been going on with parents and through SPEDPAC. What I'm hoping, I don't have a question at this moment because I feel like my colleagues have asked lots of questions and we've learned a lot this evening, but I'm much more interested in where do we go from here? I'm hoping that members will be able to tune into one of the SPEDPAC meetings. I know I'm going to go to the one tomorrow night. I really want to begin to understand more what is SPEDPAC in terms of how parents are interfacing with the information they're having, but how can we also make sure that we are hearing from parents in ways that it can impact the outcomes and the experiences of their students. I think, we've heard a lot, Ms. Bazile, from your perspectives that bring lots of experience over many years for the district, et cetera. And I'm sure that you offer wonderful opportunities to help parents understand both what has gone on and hopefully what can go on. But as we're moving forward, particularly right now with what's going on in special education and the push for inclusion, wanting to be clear about where are the SPEDPAC goals that we can be looking at for this particular year as it is working together with the office of Ms. Seelan in terms of, I always forget what it's called now. I want to call it by its wrong name. But that office, how are we making sure we are working as collaboratively together towards these goals, and that we are bringing parents along both in partnership, but also in understanding of both the limitations and the responsibilities of the district. Because sometimes all of those things, cannot be what everyone wants, but we need to be able to have continue to have this kind of conversations, but to also hear parent voices in these conversations as we all work together with our existing resources to do what we can for all students. So what is our next step from here?
I would love it, and to, as I indicated previously, to have a liaison from the school committee whom we can meet with regularly and really outline our goals and share them and collaboratively think about how we can get this work done. And that liaison could be a rotating individual that may come to some sessions and maybe you don't have time to have that single person. But because we are an advisory council, to the school committee, that I think that would be a great starting point. We already have on the table our quarterly superintendent meetings, and maybe some members would like to attend those meetings because they're already set. So I believe that would be a starting place to learn more about what we do as a council, and then so that this work is clear in terms of our role in the district.
Okay, thank you. So we can start by, you will make sure you can send to Ms. Parvex the information. I know there is a meeting tomorrow night.
Yes.
Would you send the schedule for the rest of this school year's open meetings, the SPEDPAC evening meetings? And then that can be a place we can start, and then we can have a further conversation with you and Ms. Seal to figure out what is appropriate.
Absolutely, that sounds amazing.
Committee to be able to follow up, and I know we will have another presentation from you later in the school year.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Seal.
I just wanted to add, absolutely. We have to create a flyer. So the next meeting is February 26th on decoding and dyslexia, and March 26th is a meeting on inclusion matters. We'll make sure that we also, and Edith, we can forward the flyer to make sure that SPEDPAC has a copy of the schedule for meetings. We're also in OSS, we are also through our community forums and also with some of our schools coordinating some professional learning as well as listening sessions with our families, but also looking at doing more outreach in terms of, and I really appreciate Member Torres's comment around the new IEP. So there will be some forums that we will have for our families as well. And when we put together those dates, we will share the dates of our trainings and also professional learning that we will do for families, because we're also going to be putting forward a training on transition planning, because we know that it's so important for our kids from age 14 to 22 to make sure that they understand what that means. So we'll make sure that we put together a schedule and send out of some of the trainings that we'll be doing in Office of Specialized Services as well.
Great. Again, thank you both. And we will now return to public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have any public comment.
All righty, thank you. Is there any new business? No? All right. All right, thank you all. That concludes our business for this evening. And our next meeting will take place on Wednesday, February 4th at 5:30 p.m., at which time the superintendent will present her preliminary fiscal 27 budget recommendation. If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
So
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Any discussion or objection to the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Parvex, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Peralta,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes, good night.
Ms. Torres,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, Ms. Garrett,
yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Well, good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.